Chapter 963. Zhao Feng paused for a moment as he looked at Shinjizi. The reason why he said that they should attack the 7th prince was mainly because the 8th prince and many other members of his team knew Zhao Feng. Although they weren't friends, they weren't enemies either. Another reason was that Jiang Hao's team had lost 2 members in the underground of Black Wind Valley. Among them, the crucial array master, Wuxia, had died as well. Jiang Hao's team was the 7th prince's team, so the 7th prince's overall battle power wasn't as strong as the 8th prince's. All in all, Zhao Feng chose to attack the 7th prince because of his personal feelings. But why did Shinjizi say the same thing? The other members of the 9th prince's team also looked at Zhao Feng and Shinjizi in surprise. Why is that? Yulei asked. He was curious as to why Zhao Feng and Shinjizi said the same thing. If they were talking about attacking the 8th prince, it would make more sense. If my guesses are correct, the 8th prince's overall strength is slightly stronger than the 7th prince's. After we successfully take over the Heaven's Legacy City, we need to defend against a counterattack. Old Ying's eyes spun and immediately said. He was originally planning to take over the Heaven's Legacy City where the 8th prince was. However, there had to be a reason why both Zhao Feng and Shinjizi thought that they should attack the 7th prince. Furthermore, Shinjizi was a fortune teller, so he might have divined something important. Therefore, as the brain of the team, he had to come up with a reason to convince the other members so that the team wouldn't split. That's indeed the case. Su Qingling nodded her head lightly. The 3 people with the most influence in the team agreed to attack the 7th prince. Everyone would slowly change their minds and believe them. Behind the giant boulder, the team of the 3 princes. They're heading toward the Heaven's Legacy City in the west? One of the great monarchs exclaimed. What? They're going to attack the 7th prince? How is that possible? How can the 9th prince, who's ranked 7th, be the 7th prince's match? The 7th prince's overall strength is ranked 3rd. They're courting death. In the gathering place of the 3 princes, many experts were shocked and mocked. Maybe it's because the 9th prince saw us 3 princes working together. Even if they came to attack the 8th prince, they wouldn't be able to gain anything. That's natural. With the 3 of us joining forces, it's enough to take down the 8th prince. Soon everyone thought of this point. At least they know what's good for them. The 5th prince sneered. With the 2nd prince's steadiness, it was very likely that he would let the 9th prince join in. Currently, the 3 princes were working together to split the benefits of the Heaven's Legacy City into 3. Naturally, the 5th prince was not willing to let the 9th prince join in. On the steel city wall where the 8th prince was, the members of the 8th prince's team looked at the 9th prince and company in confusion as they flew toward the Heaven's Legacy City in the west. Why did they? He originally thought that the 9th prince would join the 2nd prince's side and attack them. In this way, no matter how strong his team was, they would not be able to defend this Tianji city. Sacred Lord 100 Refined and the 2 geniuses of the Ji family also didn't understand. Zhao Feng. Disappointment appeared on Yu Tianhao's face as he looked at the people behind him and said in a serious tone. It should be because all of you lost to Zhao Feng before, so Zhao Feng thinks that attacking this Heaven's Legacy City is meaningless. Hearing this, the expressions of the 8th prince Luo Zun, Sacred Lord 100 Refined, and the geniuses of the Ji family froze, and their mouths twitched. However, they couldn't retort because this was the truth. Zhao Feng's strength was deeply engraved in everyone's hearts, especially the 8th prince's. From meeting Zhao Feng to entering the divine illusion dimension, and now knowing that Zhao Feng had the perfect blood devil sun bloodline, the 8th prince regretted many times. If he didn't maintain a good relationship with Zhao Feng back then, Zhao Feng would be a huge help to him now. At this moment in time, at the Heaven's Legacy City in the west, 7th prince, the 9th prince's team is here. A scholar with a jade-like face said softly. They really don't know how high heaven and earth are. A skinny elder with eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything came over. Next to the elder was a middle-aged male who shot out invisible sword intent from his eyes. These 2 were experts from Sky Sword Pavilion, the #1 force in the Great Gon Lord dynasty. Your Highness, this Zhao Feng from the 9th prince's team isn't simple, Jiang Hao said in a low tone. Even if he isn't simple, he's just a Void God Realm King, and his identity is the most important beast tamer in this battle. The seventh prince didn't mind what Jiang Hao said, and his eyes were filled with disdain. If the second prince and the fifth prince's team came to attack, he would have to worry about them. He didn't care about a measly ninth prince. That's true. Jiang Hao nodded his head. Zhao Feng's terrifying methods left a deep impression on him in the Black Wind Canyon. However, the most important thing in a battle was the beast tamer. How strong could Zhao Feng be in beast taming at such a young age? Jiang Hao, don't worry. I won't let his pets get close to the Heaven's Legacy City. As for you, you don't need to be so scared. An old man dressed in gray had a confident smile on his face. Jiang Hao's expression was grim, but he didn't say anything. His group had lost 2 people in the Black Wind Canyon, and one of them was an array master, Wu Yu. He and the other quasi-sacred lord had used the array in their dragon jades to return to the seventh prince's side. They had lost a lot of face. Therefore, Jiang Hao had lost his right to speak in the seventh prince's team. And it's up to Grandmaster Beast Tamer Zhang Yi now. The seventh prince said with a smile. Zhang Yi slowly walked out of the metallic building and flew onto the metallic city wall. He had a playful smile as he looked at the ninth prince's team. Several hundred ferocious beasts in front of the metallic city wall instantly opened their eyes, and a terrifying beast aura shot into the sky. Most of these beasts were prepared by him in the continent zone, and the rest were rare beasts from the imperial tombs. Because no one had come to attack the seventh prince's Heaven's Legacy City, the seventh prince's team didn't exchange for beasts in the spiritual pet garden. Come. Let this old man see just how strong you are. Zhang Yi scanned the crowd and his gaze landed on Zhao Feng. Although he heard that Zhao Feng had the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly, this was a battle between beast hordes. One spiritual pet wouldn't be able to do much. Furthermore, there were many ways to deal with the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly. The ninth prince's team also focused their gazes on Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's beast-taming abilities had opened their eyes, and they didn't know how good he was at controlling beasts. However, since Zhao Feng suggested attacking the seventh prince, everyone believed that he had some ability. Furthermore, the number of beasts Zhao Feng had far surpassed the beasts in front of the seventh prince's city gate. This was why the ninth prince's team dared to attack directly. Zhao Feng walked forward and waved his hand, and a large number of beasts instantly appeared. Oh! Black-striped scorpions, wind wolves, and 2 sky-shaking golden apes. You've given me a surprise. Zhang Yi laughed. Zhang Yi could tell with one glance that Zhao Feng's 2 beast hordes were from the original beasts in the imperial tombs. From the looks of it, the ninth prince's team had put in a lot of effort to be able to tame 2 beast hordes. However, with just these 2 groups of demonic beasts and the 2 sky-shaking golden apes, it was simply impossible for them to defeat his beast horde. There was a big difference in numbers, and then there was a big difference in beast tamers. Zhao Feng didn't bother with Zhang Yi, and a faint golden glow appeared in his left eye. At the same time, the 10,000 divine thoughts technique circulated in the depths of his soul, and several hundred thoughts merged into the bodies of each beast. Zhao Feng's consciousness merged into the beasts in front of him, and he felt as if these beasts were his limbs. He could control them as he pleased. What powerful soul intent! Zhang Yi could feel that Zhao Feng was about to attack. The strength of Zhao Feng's soul intent was on par with his, and Zhang Yi couldn't help but become cautious. The beasts below the city walls instantly started to move and get into formation. Go! Zhao Feng ordered. The first to charge out were 2 sky-shaking golden apes. Boom! Boom! The 2 sky-shaking golden apes had huge bodies, but their movements were extremely fast. They took 2 steps on the ground and instantly leaped forward like golden mountains. The wind wolves and black-striped scorpions followed closely behind. Mountain giants, go! Zhang Yi understood the sky-shaking golden apes very well. Only Yao spirits like the mountain giants, which had extremely strong defense, could be compared to them. Boom! The 4 giants clashed together. Weakness. Zhao Feng circulated his left eye, and at the same time he gathered more of his thoughts into the sky-shaking golden apes and controlled one of them to attack the right foot of a mountain giant. The other sky-shaking golden ape focused its attacks on the shoulder of the remaining mountain giant. How is this possible? How can Zhao Feng's sky-shaking golden apes know the weakness of the mountain giants? Zhang Yi was instantly shocked. The mountain giants had fought with him for many years, so they naturally had some hidden injuries. However, how could Zhao Feng's beasts be so smart? Furthermore, the attacks of the two sky-shaking golden apes were extremely smooth, and there was even a hint of low-tier combat skills. Zhang Yi even suspected that the two sky-shaking golden apes had been possessed by a king martial emperor. These battle techniques and the grasp of the attack were completely like a human's. In an instant, the two mountain giants were forced to retreat. "You guys go help as well, black-maned giant bear." Grandmaster Beast Tamer Zhang Yi had a grim expression. In their first clash, the beasts he sent out were easily defeated by Zhao Feng's sky-shaking golden apes. The two black-maned giant bears were much more agile than the mountain giants. They charged forward and slashed down with their black claws. "Retreat!" Zhao Feng gave a faint smile as he controlled the sky-shaking golden apes to retreat a few steps and tilt their heads. The claws of the black-maned giant bear brushed past the sky-shaking golden ape's fur. How is this possible? Zhang Yi almost spat out a mouthful of blood. These two sky-shaking golden apes definitely had their own consciousness. They were able to perfectly dodge the black-maned giant bear's attacks with their quick thinking and precise movements. How could a normal beast have such a mentality? The ninth prince's team, which was watching, was completely dazed. These two beasts were extremely clumsy and only knew how to attack recklessly. "These are the sky-shaking golden apes that we caught?" Shi Yulei scratched his head and was extremely puzzled. "It should be Zhao Feng who gave them special training." Su Qingling's expression froze. These two beasts seemed to have the intelligence of a human, and they even knew some combat skills. Chapter 964. Am I seeing this correctly? Zhao Feng's beast horde defeated Grandmaster Zhang Yi's beast horde in the first charge. How is this possible? Is Zhao Feng's beast-taming ability really that strong? The three princes used their divine senses to check the situation of the battle in the Western Heavens Legacy City, and exclamations of shock sounded. "This is impossible." The fifth prince released his divine sense to check the situation, but he couldn't believe what he saw. The second prince and 12th prince had solemn expressions, and they regretted inviting the ninth prince. They might have already taken over the 8th prince's Heaven's Legacy City. Apart from the 3 princes outside the Heaven's Legacy cities, the experts in the Heaven's Legacy City were also checking the 7th prince's situation. As I thought, the 8th prince smiled helplessly. Zhao Feng had once again displayed a shocking side. Impossible. Ji Bai's expression was green. He was forced back by Zhao Feng because he was a beast tamer, and his battle power was weak. Once Zhao Feng got close, he wouldn't be able to fight back at all. However, he didn't expect Zhao Feng's ability to tame and control beasts to surpass his. The 7th prince and the other members in the Western Heavens Legacy City paused, but they didn't say anything. Everyone had solemn expressions as they carefully sensed the battlefield. At this moment, Grandmaster Zhang Yi had also calmed down. It must be this brat. Zhang Yi found the problem. From the start of the battle, Zhao Feng had been standing there without saying a word. He was probably using some kind of secret technique to control the 2 sky-shaking golden apes. Therefore, the actions of the 2 beasts were very abnormal, and they were very similar to humans. I don't believe that you can control all the beasts so precisely. Zhang Yi harumphed coldly. He had heard of this kind of secret technique before, but it was only suitable when there weren't many beasts. Zhang Yi spread open his arms and released all of his consciousness into the battlefield. Team 1, Team 2, surround the sky-shaking golden apes from both sides. Team 8, 9 and 10, form a defensive formation and prepare to block the charge of the black-striped venomous scorpions and wind wolves. Professional Grandmaster Beast Tamers would divide the same type of demonic beasts into smaller groups to better control them. Zhao Feng smiled and quickly moved the chess pieces as if he was playing a game of chess. A portion of the wind wolves intercepted the demonic beasts that were reinforcing the mountain giant. At the same time, the black-striped poisonous scorpions swarmed towards the steel walls and fought with Zhang Yi's demonic beasts. What a fast reaction! Zhang Yi's forehead was covered in cold sweat. In the instant that he commanded the demonic beasts, Zhao Feng had his demonic beasts respond accordingly. Behind Zhao Feng, the 9th prince's team that was still spectating had joyful smiles on their faces. Zhao Feng is even stronger than Zhang Yi. Sure, Yulei knew Zhang Yi's reputation in the Great Gan dynasty very well. He had thought that Zhao Feng being able to stand on equal footing with Zhang Yi in the Battle of Beasts was already very impressive. Why didn't Zhao Feng release all the demonic beasts? Su Qingling was confused. They were well aware of the number of beasts Zhao Feng had. They didn't even need to control the demonic beasts in front of the 7th Prince's city gate. Maybe he's conserving his strength for a surprise attack at the critical moment. Olding thought for a moment before giving his opinion. Although they had a certain advantage in terms of demonic beasts, they were still able to defeat them. However, the difference in combat power between the two sides was too great, so they could only make up for it with demonic beasts. Therefore, if Zhao Feng could defeat Zhang Yi with the beasts on the battlefield, then the remaining beasts could be used to deal with the 7th Prince's men. Hearing Old Ying's analysis, everyone nodded. The battle power of the 7th Prince's group couldn't be underestimated. The ones that needed to be paid attention to were the 2 experts of the Sword Dao from Sky Sword Pavilion and the Soul Dao Sacred Lord. Apart from that, the 7th Prince's team also had the peerless genius of the Jiang family, Jiang Hao, and the other quasi-sacred lords were all famous experts on the continent. However, no one knew that Zhao Feng was having a great time. For the first time, he felt that being behind the scenes and controlling the entire battlefield was a great feeling. Furthermore, this method of controlling beasts was very beneficial for cultivating the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Right now, Zhao Feng was controlling 500 beasts on the battlefield. On the other hand, Zhang Yi had 700 beasts, but Zhao Feng still had the advantage. Damn it, what's going on? Zhao Feng's beasts are able to cut through the weak points of my array every time. Zhang Yi started to feel tired. The reaction speed of Zhao Feng's beasts was too fast. He was now in a passive situation, and he had to defend against Zhao Feng's beasts. Zhao Feng waved his left arm and 50 night wolves appeared. At the same time, Zhao Feng split into 50 wisps of intent and merged them into their bodies. The 50 night wolves then entered the battlefield. There was a fundamental difference between how Zhao Feng and Zhang Yi controlled the beasts. Zhang Yi controlled the beasts, but Zhao Feng personally entered the battlefield. Each beast had his consciousness, and they were like clones of Zhao Feng. What? There are more beasts? Zhang Yi's expression changed, and he commanded the beasts to form a tight formation and focus on defense. Behind Zhang Yi, in the metal building. I told you that Zhao Feng isn't simple. Jiang Hao could finally speak with his chest out. He had already warned Zhang Yi before. Unfortunately, Zhang Yi didn't put Zhao Feng in his eyes at all, and now he was in such a sorry state. Should we go to the spiritual pet garden and exchange for some powerful beasts? The 7th Prince was a bit panicked. He could also see that Zhao Feng's ability to control beasts in battle was extraordinary. Your Highness, there's no need. It's useless no matter how many beasts Zhang Yi has. The key to a battle between beasts is control. Unless he exchanges for several sacred lord-level beasts, Zhang Yi won't be a match for Zhao Feng. The scholar's eyes twinkled as he sensed the battle outside the city wall. From every detail on the battlefield, he could tell that Zhang Yi's ability to control beasts was much weaker than Zhao Feng's. If Zhang Yi couldn't control more beasts, he would only lose his footing. Then what should we do? The 7th Prince asked. If this continues, we'll lose more beasts. Why don't we just fight? The scholar said the plan in his mind, and his tone was firm. The 2 experts of the Tao of the Sword from Sky Sword Pavilion instantly opened their eyes, and an invisible sword intent shook the hearts of everyone present. That's good. A group without a sacred lord dares to invade us? A skinny male stood up, and a dark aura radiated from him that made the souls of the 2 people near him shake. Apart from the 2 quasi-sacred lords, Grandmaster Zhang Yi and the scholar, the 7th Prince's group still had 2 sacred lords and 3 quasi-sacred lords. How could the 9th Prince fight against them? Lu Tianqi, I'll leave Zhao Feng to you. All you need to do is disrupt his mental energy. The scholar looked at the middle-aged male from Sky Sword Pavilion. Easy. Lu Tianqi's words were crisp. The 6 experts flew onto the city wall. Protect Zhao Feng and the beast horde. Old Ying's expression changed dramatically. At the same time, the members of the 9th Prince's team charged out. Shin Jizi stood at the back and threw out the array flag he had prepared. A faint golden barrier instantly appeared on the battlefield and covered Zhao Feng and some of the beasts. The 9th Prince's team had already decided on a strategy. They wouldn't clash head-on with the 7th Prince. They just needed to stall the enemy experts and block their attacks. Then they would wait for Zhao Feng's beast horde to gain the upper hand and attack the 9th Prince's team. If you're in such a rush, then let's end this. Zhao Feng put away his playful thoughts and waved his right hand. Boom, 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 boom. 5 giant figures flashing with golden light appeared on the battlefield like small metal mountains. Terrifying beastly auras shot into the sky. What? There are more sky-shaking golden apes? Zhang Yi's expression changed dramatically. Zhao Feng had been holding back against his beasts. One had to know that the sky-shaking golden apes were beasts that stood at the peak of emperors. Their battle power was even stronger than normal quasi-sacred lords. How is this possible? The Confucian scholar was also greatly shocked. This made the situation even more complicated. Even if all of them attacked at full power, they wouldn't be able to instantly gain the upper hand. The scholar looked deeply at Zhao Feng. Holding back one's trump cards could disrupt the enemy's plans and achieve unexpected results. He just didn't know if Zhao Feng had any more hidden cards. Leave these 5 sky-shaking golden apes to me. A bony old man slowly stepped out, an invisible sword intent flickering around him. Sure, then I'll be counting on Sacred Lord Sharp Edge. The scholar felt lucky that the 7th Prince's team had 2 Sacred Lords. One was Sacred Lord Sharp Edge, who specialized in physical attacks, and the other was Sacred Lord Dark Soul, who specialized in soul attacks. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge stepped out, and a long white jade sword appeared in his hand. As he swung it, it created surges of sword wind. The aura of a Sacred Lord suppressed the beasts on Zhao Feng's side, and decreased the battle power of the beasts. The other 4 members immediately charged out as well. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge suddenly raised his sword, and countless tornadoes of sword chi appeared, forming a tornado of sword chi that could stir the wind and clouds. However, Sacred Lord Sharp Edge didn't swing his sword down, and the other 4 members stopped as well. Whoosh! A black ghostly shadow floated over from afar. A terrifying intent of death spread from the black figure. Even though it was so far away, it made the souls of everyone on the battlefield shake. A member of the 13th Prince's team? Sacred Lord Dark Soul had a grim expression in the 9th Prince's team. This terrifying soul aura made him not dare to act rashly. It's him. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. At the start of the Crown Prince trial, this person had attacked him for no reason. When they were about to enter the barrier of the imperial tombs, Zhao Feng caught a glimpse of a weird scene. This black-robed person was indeed not simple. After that, he also felt enmity from the black-robed person in the Black Wind Canyon Forbidden Ground. Now the black-robed person was interfering with the battle between the 9th Prince and the 7th Prince. His goal was obvious: Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng. The black-robed person was like a ghost as he descended onto the battlefield. The terrifying intent of death made the beasts below tremble in fear. Their life force quickly disappeared, and their souls started to wither. The 5 members on the 7th Prince's side immediately retreated. Who is this person? Sacred Lord Sharp Edge had a grim expression. At this instant, he felt as if the lifespan of his soul had decreased by several years. Chapter 965. At the same time, the 3 members that returned with the black-robed person saw that the black-robed person was heading toward the 9th Prince and the 7th Prince's battlefield, so they entered the Southern Heavens Legacy City. 13th Prince, we're back. Your Highness, there's something wrong with this black-robed person. He actually went to participate in the battle between the 2 princes. The 3 members that followed the black-robed person returned to the Heavens Legacy City and told the 13th Prince about the strange behavior of the black-robed person. 13th Prince, who is this person? Sacred Lord Black Ink had a grim expression. Even he didn't want to offend the aura of death radiating from the black-robed person. Ignore him. A wicked smile appeared on the 13th Prince's face. With how strong the black-robed person was, he wasn't scared of the 9th Prince's team at all. Numbers and beast hordes weren't effective against the black-robed person. This was the deal he made with the black-robed person. He gave the black-robed person the right to enter the imperial tombs and didn't restrict the black-robed person. The black-robed person would help him kill Zhao Feng. At this moment, outside the seventh prince's city, the originally intense battle instantly quietened down. The intent of death that the black-robed person radiated was a lethal threat to the beasts below. "Who are you?" the scholar's voice sounded. This black-robed person gave him an extremely weird and ominous feeling. "It's not good for you to enter our battlefield like this." The expression of a quasi-sacred lord that was about to attack became grim. "Don't think that we won't dare to attack you just because you're a member of the 13th Prince's team." Zhang Yi roared in anger. The intent of death that the black-robed person radiated had a huge effect on his beasts. The 9th Prince's team immediately stopped as well. Everyone had personally seen how strong the black-robed person was during the fights for the spots. Even Olding, who specialized in the soul and had higher battle power, didn't dare to attack the black-robed person's powerful soul attacks. Now that the black-robed person had suddenly interfered, they didn't know what was going on and couldn't act rashly. "Zhao Feng, I didn't expect you to still be alive." The black-robed person didn't seem to hear the 7th Prince's team. He looked at Zhao Feng and spoke in a dark voice. "You are?" Zhao Feng's face darkened slightly as a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He had already felt that the black-robed man's aura was very familiar, and he had also grasped the death profundity. The first thing the black-robed man said to him was that he was still alive. As such, Zhao Feng could only think of the black-robed man's true identity. It was the person who forced him to recultivate, the Emperor of Death. But that was impossible. The Emperor of Death used his death as the price to plant the cursed words of death on Zhao Feng. Since the cursed words of death had been activated, how could the Emperor of Death still be alive? Zhao Feng activated his left eye, but just like before, he was unable to see through the black robe, including the hands and feet of the person in black. Hearing the black-robed man's words, the expressions of the 7th Prince's team members eased up slightly. It seemed that this black-robed man had come for Zhao Feng. It didn't matter even if he was on the 13th Prince's side. The black-cloaked man's Death Upanishad had a strong ability to harvest low-realm beings. If the black-cloaked man was willing to help them, they wouldn't need to be afraid of Zhao Feng's beast horde. Scythe of Death. The intent of death in the air around the black-robed man suddenly started to move. A giant scythe surrounded by the power of death appeared in his hand, and it gave off an aura of death that seemed to be able to slice through heaven and earth. The instant the scythe of death appeared, a strong undulation of the intent of death spread, and the souls of everyone present trembled instinctively. What a strong intent of death, and it leans towards the soul. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge exclaimed. He had never seen anyone with such a strong intent of death before. Not good. Zhao Feng's expression became grim as he waved his left arm, and instantly put all the beasts into the misty spatial world. The black-robed man waved the giant scythe of death and slashed it toward Zhao Feng, unleashing a black crescent that covered an extremely large area. A surge of condensed intent of death, and a strong aura of death spread. Whoosh! Whoosh! Shinjizi's defensive array blocked the physical attack from the black crescent, but the death soul attack passed through it. Retreat! As Zhao Feng retreated, a strong surge of wind lightning pushed back some of the members of the 9th Prince's team. The attack from the black-robed man's scythe of death landed on the ground, and left behind a very long, pitch-black ravine. All the nearby flowers and plants were instantly wiped out. Zhao Feng and the members of the 9th Prince's team managed to dodge the attack range of the Scythe of Death. After all, Zhao Feng was extremely familiar with this move, but Zhang Yi wasn't as lucky. However, Zhang Yi wasn't so lucky. The black-robed man's death scythe covered a huge area, and a portion of the profound meaning of death's power landed on his beast horde. The life force of several dozen king-level beasts was instantly sucked out, and their souls were sucked out. What is the meaning of this? Zhang Yi roared in anger. This was the 7th Prince's territory. The black-robed man had charged over arrogantly and didn't know how to hold back at all, injuring his beasts. This powerful intent of death was extremely damaging to life force, and it was comparable to the intent of destruction. The life force of the king-level beasts was very low, so they couldn't fight back at all. The black-robed man's attack made the expressions of the members of the 9th Prince's team become grim, and their hearts became heavy. The black-robed man immediately attacked Zhao Feng the moment he arrived, and the power that the black-robed man controlled countered the beasts. Luckily, Zhao Feng had predicted this and put away the beasts in time, or else the losses would have been huge. However, the current situation wasn't any better. Although the black-robed man was only a quasi-sacred lord, the intent of death he controlled countered many powers, and he specialized in soul attacks. Everyone felt troubled. Zhao Feng, who is this person? Olding immediately messaged Zhao Feng. It was obvious that the black-robed man was targeting Zhao Feng. The black-robed man completely ignored the 7th Prince's team, so Olding obviously wouldn't ask the black-robed man. He might be an enemy of mine from the past. Zhao Feng took a deep breath. The power of death that the black-robed man controlled was many times stronger than the Emperor of Death's. However, the feeling that the black-robed man gave Zhao Feng was that of the Emperor of Death. What? Olding was stunned. An enemy that Zhao Feng had in the past should have been before he took over the body. How could Zhao Feng have offended such a strong enemy before he took over the body? Stay away from him. His intent of death is too strong, and he specializes in soul attacks. Zhao Feng messaged everyone in the 9th Prince's team. The power of death wasn't a joke. And Shi Yulei stared at the black-robed man. Although his Shi family bloodline specialized in defense, it could only block the black-robed man's physical attacks. On the other hand, the black-robed man's attacks mostly came from the soul. The soul was Shi Yulei's weakness. Even though they were both quasi-sacred lords, he didn't dare to act rashly. Similarly, Su Qingling specialized in soul attacks, but her cultivation was too low. Zhou Su'er, Jing Kai, and company didn't even have the ability to fight back. The 9th Prince's team slowly retreated. I only want to kill Zhao Feng. You can fuck off. The black-robed man stared at Zhao Feng, and his voice sounded in everyone's soul. Friend, since your enemy is Zhao Feng, why don't you team up with us? The scholar gave a faint smile. The enemy of an enemy was a friend. As long as the black-robed man closed in on Zhao Feng, the 9th Prince's team wouldn't have the power of the beast horde, and they would be at their mercy. Ha ha. The black-robed man laughed, and a black mist spread from his body. He looked like the Grim Reaper of Hell. The black-robed man still didn't reply to the scholar. He charged at Zhao Feng, and his powerful soul power of death flowed into the scythe of death. You guys go as well. The scholar immediately messaged. The members of the 7th Prince's team instantly prepared to charge out. Retreat. Olding roared when he saw that the 7th Prince's team was about to attack. All the members of the 9th Prince's team, including Zhao Feng, immediately retreated and left the 7th Prince's city walls. At this moment, Zhao Feng's beast horde was countered by the black-robed man, so they definitely couldn't attack the city. If they retreated, not all the members of the 7th Prince's team would chase after them. They had to defend the city. If a large number of members left, the other 3 princes would definitely take over the Heaven's Legacy city. Zhao Feng, are you scared now? The black-robed man had a deadly smile as he chased after Zhao Feng, and a terrifying soul aura of death covered the hearts of the 9th Prince's team. What do we do? Should we chase after them? Sacred Lord Dark Soul asked. The 9th Prince's team had already retreated. Sacred Lord Dark Soul, you go. With the strength of you and the black-robed man, you don't need to be scared of the 9th Prince's team. The scholar thought for a moment and said, if Sacred Lord Dark Soul left, the 7th Prince's team still had 1 Sacred Lord. Even if the other 3 princes came to attack, they wouldn't be defeated immediately. If Zhang Yi's beast horde didn't suffer any losses, they would be able to send out another member. Sure. Sacred Lord Dark Soul turned into a streak of black light and left the city walls. You're the Emperor of Death? Zhao Feng had a grim expression as he asked for the first time. Hearing that, Su Qingling, Jing Kai, and Zhou Su'er were stunned. They had heard of the Emperor of Death before. He was an ancient emperor that possessed the Eye of Death. Had his strength already reached such a level? However, Olding, the 9th Prince, and company knew that the true Emperor of Death had already been killed by Zhao Feng. I'm the one who will kill you. The black-robed man waved the scythe of death, and a black crescent instantly covered the 9th Prince's team. Sacred lightning dominating body. Zhao Feng immediately circulated the sacred lightning body, and golden lightning flashed around his body. He then circulated the fire of wind lightning and punched out with both fists. Zhao Feng's fire of wind lightning True Yuan contained the symbol of God tribulation lightning, and the power of destruction was on the same level as the power of death. Boom! Zhao Feng's fist of golden lightning destroyed the black-robed man's physical attack. A faint crescent of death shot over from the dark golden storm. This was a soul-based power that wasn't affected by physical attacks. However, Zhao Feng was prepared for this. A powerful surge of soul intent shot out with the power of God tribulation lightning and shattered it. Your soul intent? The black-robed man was slightly surprised. The soul intent that Zhao Feng displayed just now had surpassed that of a quasi-sacred lord. As I thought, I can't underestimate you, Zhao Feng. The black-robed man's voice was cold. Not good, Zhao Feng. Sacred Lord Dark Soul from the 7th Prince's team is here as well. Old Ying's heart shook when he saw a streak of black light shoot over. Chapter 966. Everything that happened outside the 7th Prince's city walls. The experts in the other 3 Heaven's Legacy cities, and the teams of the 3 princes outside the Heaven's Legacy cities all saw it. The black-robed man's powerful death ultimacy had frightened countless experts. Because of the appearance of the black-robed person, the 9th Prince's team lost their advantage, and they retreated. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhao Feng put away the beasts in time, the normal kings would have been killed by the power of death. That black-robed person is too terrifying. The alliance of the 3 princes fell silent. After a while, a martial monarch exclaimed in shock. We can only blame Zhao Feng for offending too many people. Shui Yuan gloated. Even the 2 sacred lords on the 7th prince's side were wary of the black-robed person's strength. This meant that Zhao Feng was dead for sure. Luckily, we didn't invite the 9th prince. The 2nd prince felt lucky. The black-robed person was obviously targeting Zhao Feng, but the intent of death was too strong. It countered all living beings, especially souls. Even a wisp of it contained unimaginable power. On the 8th prince's city walls. Who is that black-robed person? Yu Linghua murmured. Even sacred lords wouldn't dare to be careless against the intent of death that the black-robed person controlled. The Emperor of Death should be dead already. The 8th prince and Luo Xun were stunned. They could only think of the Emperor of Death, who had the Eye of Death, to be able to control such a strong power of death. Zhao Feng won't lose. Yu Tianhao looked at the 9th prince's team and the black-robed person that were leaving. Apart from the people in the imperial tombs, the terrifying strength of the black-robed person also created waves in the Great Gone Imperial Palace. Not good, Zhao Feng. Sacred Lord Dark Soul from the 7th prince's team is here as well. Old Ying's heart shook when he saw a beam of black light fly over. At the same time, Old Ying's single eye locked onto the black-robed person with a puzzled expression. They had all retreated from the 7th prince's Heaven's Legacy city, but the black-robed person was still closing in. One had to know that the 9th prince's team had a total of 8 people. Even if they weren't strong, they could easily finish off the black-robed person if they worked together. However, the black-robed man had a fearless look on his face, completely ignoring everyone except for Zhao Feng. This kind of unscrupulous disregard was definitely not a sign of stupidity. The black-robed person probably had some hidden cards that allowed him to ignore the other members of the 9th prince's team. Whoosh! A pair of scarlet lightning wings unfurled on Zhao Feng's back. Xiao! Zhao Feng turned into a bolt of scarlet lightning and escaped several miles away from the 9th prince's team. At the same time, Zhao Feng's voice sounded in the minds of the 9th prince's members. I'll leave Sacred Lord Dark Soul to you. All right. The 9th prince and his subordinates agreed in their hearts. From their point of view, the strength of the black-robed person surpassed even Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Most importantly, the black-robed man controlled the power of death. They had no way to deal with him. Olding immediately nodded his head. He understood Zhao Feng's intentions. He couldn't let Sacred Lord Dark Soul team up with the black-robed person. If it was just stopping Sacred Lord Dark Soul, the 6 of them could still do it. They could only hope that nothing bad happened to Zhao Feng. Who? Death Instant Shadow. The black-robed person turned into a dark streak of light and chased after Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng, you won't be able to escape. The black-robed person's cold voice sounded behind Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's heart dropped. The Death Instant Shadow was the Emperor of Death's spatial movement technique. Now that the black-robed person's cultivation had reached the level of a quasi-sacred lord, his intent of death had become even stronger. Even if Zhao Feng used the lightning wing's spatial flash, he wouldn't be able to escape. Who said I was going to run? Zhao Feng had only separated from the 9th Prince's team to prevent Sacred Lord Dark Soul from teaming up with the black-robed person. No matter who the black-robed person's true identity was, he was going to kill him today. Zhao Feng suddenly stopped and stared at the black-robed person with fiery eyes. You still don't know what's good for you. The black-robed person snickered coldly, and a strong surge of death intent covered Zhao Feng. Boom. The Blood Devil Sun bloodline within Zhao Feng's body started to burn. A glass-like flame that looked like a blood-colored sun suddenly appeared around Zhao Feng's body. A scorching and terrifying aura exploded and broke through the intent of death around him. Boom. Wang. Zhao Feng turned into a ball of blood-colored lightning and charged toward the black-robed person. He first had to reveal the black-robed person's true identity. Otherwise, he could only suspect that this person was the Emperor of Death. Oh, you seem to have taken over a strong bloodline. The black-robed person exclaimed. The perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline was one of the top 10 Imperial Dao bloodlines. The black-robed person could obviously feel it, but he still acted like he didn't care. Ding. Bam. Lightning crackled around Zhao Feng's body as he clashed with the black-robed person's scythe of death. Vroom. The power of the perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline instantly ignited the black-robed person. However, the bright red Yang Yen flame was immediately extinguished by a wave of death will. The intent of death could destroy everything. No matter how strong a flame was, it would eventually be extinguished. Zhao Feng's gaze was deep. He had expected this. If his sacred lightning body had reached the 6th level, the intent of death might not have countered the intent of death to such a degree. However, there was something else that Zhao Feng cared about. The Blood Devil Sun bloodline didn't seem to have any effect. That's right, Zhao Feng's perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline didn't absorb any blood essence from the black-robed person's body. Only a portion of the Yuan Qi was absorbed by Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng, who was too close to the black-robed person, felt his life force being eroded by the intent of death. What a strong body, and this power of lightning. The black-robed person was slightly surprised. This unique power of lightning seemed to be able to resist his intent of death. Zhao Feng harumphed coldly and circulated his sacred lightning body to the maximum. At the same time, he unleashed the full power of the Blood Devil Sun bloodline, and a bright red fist of lightning punched out. Zhao Feng wasn't an idiot. How could he fight the black-robed person who controlled the intent of death in close combat? His sacred lightning body had merged with a large amount of ancient lightning from the ancient dream realm, so it had a certain level of resistance against the intent of death. However, Zhao Feng could still feel the life force in his body slowly fading away. From this, one could see how terrifying the intent of death was. Zhao Feng, you will definitely die today. Zhao Feng's endless methods seemed to make the black-robed person think of something, and he immediately harumphed angrily. The intent of death around the black-robed person slowly turned into a pitch-black force field. Death force field. The power of death spun like ink within the pitch-black force field. All life force within its range was killed, and even the heaven-earth Yuan Qi was forcefully sucked away. The moment the death force field appeared, Zhao Feng sensed that the vitality in his body was flowing away at a faster rate. Boom. The death force field absorbed as much of Zhao Feng's life force as it could before twisting and creating a terrifying devouring force. Zhao Feng's expression became grim. The death force field was still one of the Emperor of Death's secret techniques. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhao Feng used the scarlet wings of lightning to instantly retreat. Boom! Zhao Feng's figure vanished into the air, and a powerful death intent and shockwave engulfed the area. Die Zhao Feng! An even stronger intent of death appeared around the black-robed person, and it floated in heaven and earth like a ghost. All the Yuan Qi and life force within several miles was devoured and poured into the black-robed person's scythe of death. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed slightly as he maintained his distance from the black-robed person. This terrifying intent of death caused the life force in Zhao Feng's body to flow away even faster. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhao Feng's left eye had transformed into a god tribulation lightning soul body, even his soul would have withered under this power. At this moment, the terrifying strength that the black-robed person displayed had surpassed normal sacred lords. Even Sacred Lord Sharpedge didn't dare to approach him recklessly. Boom! The black-robed person's scythe of death suddenly moved. A black crescent moon that was dozens of yards long shot toward Zhao Feng with the terrifying intent of death. Zhao Feng's expression didn't change. A primordial, primitive, thunderstorm power spread out from his back and merged into the void. Everything within a radius of several dozen miles instantly became a dark dimension. And Zhao Feng was able to control the laws and intents of this ancient dimension. This was the first time that Zhao Feng had used the hidden cards of his little world in battle. A little world that can merge into the ancient dimension? The black-robed person was surprised. One had to know that even his own little world wasn't able to merge into this dimension. He could only use it to protect himself, and it had the same effect as the death force field. The black-robed person's power was slightly suppressed within Zhao Feng's little world of wind lightning. The black-robed person's attack was weakened in Zhao Feng's little world, so Zhao Feng was able to dodge it. However, the black crescent moon that flew away from Zhao Feng still took away part of his life force. Damn it, the life force in my body is being taken away. My sacred lightning body and perfect blood devil sun bloodline will both be weakened. For the first time, Zhao Feng felt that this person was troublesome. Back then, the Emperor of Death's intent of death countered the Emperor of Death's soul even more. He relied on his God Eye's immunity to soul attacks to counter the Emperor of Death. However, the black-robed person's intent of death countered both the soul and the physical world. If this continued, Zhao Feng wouldn't even be able to maintain his sacred lightning body. Determination flashed through Zhao Feng's eyes. Blood Devil Charge. Zhao Feng circulated his perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline to the maximum, and the life force in his body was quickly depleted. The glass-like flames around Zhao Feng's body surged, and the sound of explosions could be heard. The image of a bright red sun started to appear behind him, and a whirlpool started to spin within it. Lightning Wing's spatial flash. Zhao Feng flew into the air and instantly used the Blood Devil Sun bloodline technique, Blood Devil Charge. With the addition of the Lightning Wing's spatial flash and his little world, the damage of this attack was pushed to the limit. His entire body was like a scorching shooting star in a pitch-black world, and he emanated a terrifying physical pressure of fire and lightning that could make ghosts and gods weep. A wave of dazzling crimson light erupted from his body as he smashed towards the black-robed man within the death energy field. This attack was the strongest physical attack that Zhao Feng had ever used. This attack will reveal your true face. Chapter 967. With this attack, I'll reveal your true face. This was Zhao Feng's strongest physical attack. He combined the fire of wind lightning, the sacred lightning body, the Blood Devil Sun bloodline, the Blood Devil Charge, and the Lightning Wing's spatial flash into one. In an instant, the blazing bolt of lightning that Zhao Feng had turned into arrived in front of the black-robed person. The terrifying physical power charged into the black-robed person's death force field, and ignored the laws of the force field as he punched toward the black-robed person. Zhao Feng, did you give up on the God Eye and choose body strengthening after recultivating? The black-robed person laughed coldly and spoke in a dark voice when Zhao Feng's fist was only a few centimeters away from his body. Zhao Feng's expression instantly changed. Even though the power of this punch covered everything, he could still clearly hear what the black-robed person said. From these words, Zhao Feng was even more certain of the black-robed person's true identity. However, what truly shocked Zhao Feng wasn't these words, but the black-robed person himself. He didn't even move when facing Zhao Feng's terrifying attack. He didn't react at all, as if he was waiting to be slaughtered. This made Zhao Feng feel weird. Boom. The black-robed person's body was completely submerged by Zhao Feng's terrifying attack. His entire body was shattered into pieces by the power of fire and lightning and turned into dust. The black-robed person's Yuan soul stood still. After all, Zhao Feng was only using a physical attack. However, a forbidden power of the Eye of Death then spread from behind him, causing Zhao Feng's soul to shake. Zhao Feng immediately used the scarlet wings of lightning to turn around after shattering the black-robed person's body. The translucent, pitch-black soul was densely covered in countless twisted and obscure runes. It was abnormally malevolent and terrifying. There was a pair of pitch-black eyes at the head of the soul. There was a bottomless whirlpool in the eyes that seemed to lead to the abyss of death. Eye of Death. Zhao Feng instantly exclaimed. Furthermore, Zhang Yuanhun's face was extremely similar to the Emperor of Death. It was the Emperor of Death. How was this possible? After witnessing it with his own eyes, fear rose in Zhao Feng's heart. Why had the Emperor of Death, who had committed suicide and left behind the cursed words of death, revived? And this pair of eyes of death. Dark pupil death flame. The Emperor of Death's source spirit's jet-black eyes released an endless deathly aura that turned into a forbidden black light. Being caught off guard, Zhao Feng was directly hit. Zhao Feng felt a chill in his heart and soul. He felt the danger of death. Whoosh! The dark-eye death flames landed on Zhao Feng and clashed with his sacred lightning body and blood devil sun flames. At the same time, Zhao Feng's soul was corroded and burned by a black flame, which contained the death power Upanishad that could destroy everything. Boom! More than 2,000 symbols of God Tribulation lightning flashed within Zhao Feng's lightning soul body. God Tribulation lightning was hidden within Zhao Feng's soul, and it could refine his soul at any time. Zhao Feng had even used his lightning soul body to absorb the power of ancient lightning a while ago. However, the dark pupil death flame that the Emperor of Death used was on a completely different level. The intent of death within it even made Zhao Feng feel like he had aged. Countless bolts of lightning intertwined with the black flame, and the two started to erode each other. One side was death, and the other side was destruction. Both contained terrifying power. The God Tribulation lightning completely destroyed the last wisp of black flame. After all, it was just an eye bloodline attack from the Emperor of Death, and Zhao Feng's soul contained limitless soul power. However, not every inch of Zhao Feng's soul contained the symbols of God Tribulation lightning. The dark pupil death flame soul power was everywhere, and it still managed to reach Zhao Feng's soul. The lifespan of my soul has decreased. Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat. Although the Emperor of Death's soul eye bloodline technique was destroyed by his God Tribulation lightning, his lightning soul body was still affected by the intent of death. One had to know that Zhao Feng's soul intent had reached the level of a sacred lord. The strength of his soul and resistance to soul attacks far surpassed initial stage mystic light realm sacred lords that specialized in the soul. This meant that if normal sacred lords were to face the Emperor of Death's eye bloodline attack, their lifespan would decrease by at least 1,000 years depending on the strength of their soul. At the same time, the wisp of black flame that touched Zhao Feng's body also took away part of Zhao Feng's life force. Your soul intent. Zhao Feng wasn't the only one stunned. The Emperor of Death revealed a surprised expression as well. From the very start of the battle, Zhao Feng had been using material attacks instead of his usual style. The Emperor of Death even thought that Zhao Feng's soul intent was growing slower. However, the Emperor of Death's forbidden eye bloodline technique was still blocked by Zhao Feng even though he had comprehended the laws of death. This meant that Zhao Feng's soul intent was on par with his. It had reached the level of a sacred lord. Looks like I underestimated you once again. You're not even an emperor, but you already have the soul intent of a beginning stage mystic light realm. As expected of someone with a god eye. The Emperor of Death's Yuan soul didn't feel much regret. Instead, it started to laugh in a terrifying manner. Emperor of Death, why aren't you dead yet? Zhao Feng stared at the Emperor of Death's Yuan soul with a fiery gaze and questioned. Countless black dust particles suddenly gathered around the Emperor of Death's Yuan soul and formed pieces of cloth, flesh, and bones. In the end, it formed a complete black-robed body that covered the Emperor of Death's Yuan soul. This is... Zhao Feng's left eye could clearly see that the body that he had crushed into pieces was slowly recovering. It was as if time had reversed, and it was as good as new. At this moment, Zhao Feng sensed a supreme and irreversible intent from this black-robed body. One that he couldn't even describe. He couldn't describe it, but this intent was similar to the intent of time, death, and destruction. Who said that I'm not dead? The Emperor of Death didn't reply to Zhao Feng's question. Instead, he revealed a smug expression. The shock and panic that Zhao Feng showed was exactly what he wanted to see. Hearing the Emperor of Death's reply, Zhao Feng wanted to curse, but he didn't say anything. His gaze was attracted by the Emperor of Death's body. The Emperor of Death's body was extremely weird, and it was even stronger than the immortal Death body. It was unbelievably strong. The immortal Death body was an undying body that had strong survivability and no weaknesses. However, once a person's soul lost its body, the power of its soul would start to weaken. This was why the Emperor of Death was in a rush to take over someone else's body after self-destructing. However, the Emperor of Death's body had been smashed into pieces by Zhao Feng, but he was able to recover to his original state in such a short amount of time. Zhao Feng had never heard of such a body before. It was almost undying. This meant that if Zhao Feng wanted to kill the Emperor of Death, he would have to destroy the latter's soul. This was because the Emperor of Death's body wouldn't die, and it could recover even if it was smashed into pieces. However, Zhao Feng suddenly thought of something else, the cursed words of death. If he killed the Emperor of Death again, would the cursed words of death descend upon Zhao Feng again? Zhao Feng's eyes started to move around as he became wary. No. Zhao Feng finally realized that something was wrong. If the Emperor of Death could use the cursed words of death again, then he wouldn't have been chased by emperors and sacred lords, and he wouldn't have had to take over someone else's body twice. If he had this ability, the Emperor of Death would have been famous for killing sacred lords in the past. However, in reality, Zhao Feng had never heard of the cursed words of death appearing in the true martial sacred land. I don't believe that you can use the cursed words of death again. Zhao Feng's heart was as clear as a mirror, and he got rid of the fear that the cursed words of death brought him. I don't care if you're dead or not. Today either you die or I die. Zhao Feng's soul became clear, and the power of his soul became purer and stronger. His goal was set. Hearing what Zhao Feng said, the Emperor of Death's eyes were filled with helplessness and disappointment, but it soon turned into limitless anger and hatred. Zhao Feng, I told you that I'll make you die a horrible death. The Emperor of Death roared in anger. Wind, lightning, eye, flame. Zhao Feng circulated his soul intent, and his faint golden left eye flashed with a profound golden light. At the same time, all the soul power in his body surged into his left eye. A surge of eye bloodline flames instantly appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye. Golden purple light spun around it, and dark god tribulation lightning symbols appeared. How could Zhao Feng not counterattack after being hit by the Emperor of Death's dark eye death flames? Boom! A ball of transparent purple and gold lightning fire with the aura of god tribulation lightning landed on the Emperor of Death's head. With Zhao Feng's soul intent, eye bloodline techniques, and the power of god tribulation lightning, he could even threaten the souls of early-stage sacred lords. Zhao Feng hadn't used his eye bloodline technique yet after entering the imperial tombs. This was because the enemy he met wasn't the type that had to die. Arg! The Emperor of Death screamed as his body was burned by the purple and gold lightning fire, and the power of god tribulation lightning spread. At the same time, the Emperor of Death's soul, which was covered in mysterious seals, was being attacked by the limitless lightning fire. Zhao Feng's life force and lifespan were stolen by the Emperor of Death's intent of death. At the same time, Zhao Feng's god tribulation lightning caused irreparable damage to the Emperor of Death's soul. The Emperor of Death's body was destroyed by the lightning fire, but his tattered black robe and body started to slowly recover. However, this time, Zhao Feng saw that there were some black holes on the Emperor of Death's black robe. Zhao Feng's eyes flashed. As I thought, the power of god tribulation lightning is still effective against you. Zhao Feng, you're too full of yourself. I'll let you see a brand new intent of death, an ultimate eye bloodline technique of death. A black light flashed through the Emperor of Death's eyes as he became filled with hatred. However, at the same time, he could already see how Zhao Feng would die under his ultimate eye bloodline technique of death. At the same time, Olding and Shiyulei's figures appeared in the distance as Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death fought. Olding was stunned as he saw the black-robed person's body slowly reform after being destroyed by Zhao Feng. His expression changed dramatically as he roared, "Zhao Feng, watch out! The Emperor of Death has become a samsara immortal body." Chapter 968. I didn't think that there would be someone here who knows about the samsara immortal body. The Emperor of Death glanced at Olding in the distance and then ignored him. Samsara immortal body? Zhao Feng lightly exclaimed and then fell into deep thought. When he was destroying the Emperor of Death's body, Zhao Feng realized that this black robe wasn't the Emperor of Death's original body. The mysterious ultimate power on the black robe made Zhao Feng think of the 8 great god eyes. The Emperor of Death had only revived his soul. Eyes of Samsara. Based on all the clues, Zhao Feng could only think of this unique eye among the 8 great god eyes. Zhao Feng didn't know much about the abilities of the eyes of Samsara. However, Zhao Feng was sure that the Emperor of Death's undying body was related to the eyes of Samsara. The Emperor of Death had been an emperor for several thousand years. Zhao Feng didn't believe that the Emperor of Death could become a quasi-sacred lord in just a few years after reviving. Zhao Feng, you're the one who made me like this. The Emperor of Death let out an angry and sorrowful roar after his true body was seen through. The power of Death's resentment was emitted from his body. I didn't want you to become like this. I just wanted you to die. Zhao Feng had a cold expression as he looked at the Emperor of Death. These were Zhao Feng's heartfelt words. However, Zhao Feng could feel the Emperor of Death's pain from the Emperor of Death's words. Why would the Emperor of Death feel pain after reviving with an undying quasi-sacred lord body? The Emperor of Death probably paid a heavy price that even Zhao Feng couldn't imagine for him to revive. This heavy price was probably even more painful than death. Zhao Feng believed that one had to pay a price to obtain any power. For example, if Nan Gongxing wasn't strong enough, he would have probably been demonized already, and the real Nan Gongxing would have died a long time ago. Zhao Feng looked at the Emperor of Death. If he could kill the Emperor of Death once, he could kill him again. Wind Lightning Eye Flame. Zhao Feng activated the Wind Lightning Eye Flame with his left eye. This was the most effective eye bloodline technique against the Emperor of Death. The power of the Tribulation Lightning was effective against the Emperor of Death's soul and immortal body. It's useless, Zhao Feng. The Death Emperor let out a cry of agony as he endured Zhao Feng's eye technique attack with his powerful soul intent. Not only is my body immortal, even my soul is the same. The Emperor of Death laughed sinisterly. Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat as he locked his eyebrows together, but he didn't refute the Emperor of Death's words. The Emperor of Death's black robe didn't recover. He could also feel that the damage that the Wind Lightning Eye Flame had done to the Emperor of Death's soul hadn't recovered yet. If so, why would the Death Emperor say such words? The soul is also immortal? How could this be? What a load of nonsense. Zhao Feng, with his samsara immortal body, even his soul is immortal. Old Ying's voice sounded in the distance. Zhao Feng almost tripped and fell to the ground. Even Old Ying said such a thing? How was this possible? Even if you destroy his soul today, the Emperor of Death will still be able to climb out of the samsara of death. Old Ying's voice trembled as he looked at the Emperor of Death. Old Ying? Did you remember wrongly? How is this possible? Sure, Yulei couldn't believe it, and his body started to tremble as he looked at the Emperor of Death. Soul and body, immortal and indestructible. How is this possible? Was this the power of the eyes of samsara? This was too inconceivable. Sure, Yulei, you're wrong. Old Ying sighed as he looked deeply at the Emperor of Death with pity in his eyes. Souls that fall into the samsara of death will never be able to reincarnate. They can't die even if they want to, and they can't be reborn even if they want to. The body that the Emperor of Death is currently residing in is just a samsara body created by the eyes of samsara. He can't even take over another body. Old Ying had a solemn expression as he slowly spat out some ancient information. This? Sure, Yulei's heart jumped when he heard this. He couldn't die even if he wanted to, but he couldn't be reborn even if he wanted to. He would never be able to have peace and reincarnate. Zhao Feng obviously heard what Old Ying said, and he was stunned. He never would have thought that the price of reviving the Emperor of Death would be so terrifying. This meant that the Emperor of Death's soul was undying, and the cursed words of death were indeed useless. How could someone who couldn't even die use the cursed words of death? Furthermore, the potential of a soul that falls into the samsara of death is greatly reduced. The Emperor of Death was only able to comprehend something from death, because he had the eyes of death. This was his final step forward. Old Ying was also stunned. Probably only the owner of the eyes of death could comprehend something from death. However, even if the Emperor of Death stopped here, His strength and intent of death were enough for him to dominate the Great Gon Lord dynasty. Zhao Feng, I will never die, but in the end you will die by my hand. Seeing Zhao Feng's shocked expression, the Emperor of Death roared into the sky and spat out limitless hatred. Ultimate Eye Bloodline Technique of Death. The Emperor of Death's expression suddenly changed, and a wicked smile appeared on his face. The Emperor of Death's eyes started to spin rapidly, and limitless intent of death merged into the center of the whirlpool. The area around the Emperor of Death was pitch black, and it was like an abyss of death. Gaze of Death. A cold voice sounded across the soul dimension, and everything within 1,000 miles became deathly silent. The Emperor of Death's black robe suddenly fell off, revealing his terrifying head covered in bandages. His pitch-black eyes of death radiated an aura of death that was as cold as the heavenly Tao as he stared at Zhao Feng. At this moment in time, countless beings within 1,000 miles seemed to be covered by the shadow of death. Their hearts felt cold and uneasy, and they were unable to stop the power of the heavenly Tao. They could only allow it to corrode them. This move again? Our souls have both reached the beginning stage mystic light realm. How can this move be effective against me? Zhao Feng was surprised, but he mocked on the surface. The gaze of death was useless against Zhao Feng a long time ago. The Emperor of Death shouldn't be stupid enough to use this move against him. Zhao Feng carefully circulated his eye intent, and prepared to block the Emperor of Death's gaze of death. Zhao Feng, my intent of death has become stronger after experiencing the samsara of life and death. You will die today. The Emperor of Death snickered coldly when he saw how calm Zhao Feng was. Boom. A soul eye bloodline technique of death descended onto Zhao Feng's body. Limitless intent of death bound Zhao Feng's body and soul. Zhao Feng froze as his body went cold. This isn't the gaze of death. Zhao Feng was surprised. The gaze of death that the Emperor of Death was using right now was completely different from before. At this moment, the gaze of death didn't have any suction force on his soul. Instead, it was continuously eroding his life force and lifespan. All living beings within 1,000 miles were affected by the Emperor of Death's gaze of death, and their life force started to slowly disappear. Flowers and grass withered, and beasts aged. They walked towards death step by step and turned to dust. Even the rocks and boulders seemed to have been eroded by the passage of time. Their splendor peeled off and finally disappeared. The entire world seemed to become a dimension of death. In the end, nothing would be left. This is? Sure Yulei, let's go. Olding roared. He was dozens of miles away, but he could still feel a terrifying power of death lock onto him. The life force within his body started to disappear, and his soul's lifespan was shortened by dozens of years. Sure Yulei and Olding quickly retreated from the Emperor of Death's eye bloodline technique, and their hearts started to beat rapidly. What can Zhao Feng do against such a terrifying eye bloodline technique of death? Sure Yulei's expression was filled with fear. He was an expert that specialized in body strengthening, so he had a lot of life force within his body. He could clearly feel the Emperor of Death's terrifying eye bloodline technique. They were only affected by the shockwaves of the gaze of death. Zhao Feng, who was under the gaze of death, had to face a lot of intent of death. You have the protection of a god's eye, so my gaze of death won't be able to suck out your soul. Now that I've comprehended a new intent of death, I've created a new gaze of death for you. The Emperor of Death gave a smug smile as his eyes started to spin, and he unleashed an even more powerful eye bloodline technique. The brand new gaze of death was his strongest eye bloodline technique at the moment. The target that was stared at, regardless of whether it was their body or soul, would slowly walk towards death and turn to dust. However, the god's eye wouldn't be affected by the intent of death. When your body and soul completely disappear, only your god's eye will remain. The Emperor of Death's cold voice sounded in Zhao Feng's mind. The new gaze of death was prepared for Zhao Feng, and it was prepared to steal the ninth god's eye. The Emperor of Death's goal had always been the eye of death. What a powerful intent of death. From the looks of it, the Emperor of Death has gambled everything on this move. Zhao Feng's heart trembled. The Emperor of Death had gathered all of his soul power and intent of death into the new gaze of death. At this moment, the life force within Zhao Feng's body was quickly disappearing, and the light of his sacred lightning body started to dim. At the same time, the lifespan of Zhao Feng's soul was also decreasing. Even though Zhao Feng's soul had evolved into a lightning soul body and contained limitless God tribulation lightning, it was unable to block the gaze of death. No, I can't just sit here and wait for death. Zhao Feng's entire body, including his soul, couldn't move. He was restricted by the intent of death. However, his left eye was the only exception. Zhao Feng took a deep breath as a golden eye bloodline power appeared in his left eye. A bottomless golden-purple whirlpool appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye, and it connected to a golden-purple world covered in mist. Gaze of the God's Eye. A fatally attractive force appeared from Zhao Feng's God's spiritual eye. This was the only thing Zhao Feng could do. All he needed to do was use the gaze of the God's Eye to suck the Emperor of Death's soul into the dimension of his left eye. Then the Emperor of Death's gaze of death would disappear. In the air, a black soul slowly left the black-robed man's body. It's useless, Zhao Feng. Our souls are on the same level. The Emperor of Death laughed wickedly. The Emperor of Death's soul intent fought back against the suction force from Zhao Feng's God's Eye. I'll be able to escape the samsara of death and be reborn after obtaining your God's Eye. Chapter 969. If I obtain your God's Eye, I'll be able to escape the samsara of death and be reborn. The Emperor of Death revealed an excited expression. This was his only chance. Wang boom. The brand new gaze of death and the gaze of the God's Eye clashed, and a golden purple black mist started to twist. The terrifying soul dimension aura turned everything within 1,000 miles into a forbidden zone. Rumble. All of the God tribulation lightning in Zhao Feng's soul started to shine, and his soul started to become like a living being of lightning. Lightning spread throughout his soul as he fought back against the intent of death. At the same time, Zhao Feng circulated his sacred lightning body without caring about the price. Right now, he was competing with the Emperor of Death in terms of endurance. If he could absorb the Emperor of Death's soul into the dimension of his left eye first, then it would be his victory. If the Emperor of Death's gaze of death could erode his life force and soul before that happened, then it would be the Emperor of Death's victory. However, the situation was extremely bad. The Emperor of Death's soul intent was on par with Zhao Feng's. On the other hand, Zhao Feng had learned the gaze of the God's Eye from the Emperor of Death. Therefore, the Emperor of Death's resistance to the gaze of the God's Eye was extremely strong. At this moment, only the head of the Emperor of Death's soul was pulled out. On the other hand, Zhao Feng's sacred lightning body was about to reach its limit, and the lines of lightning on it became dimmer and dimmer. Luckily, Zhao Feng had a lightning soul body, so the weakening of his soul was slower. After all, Zhao Feng's soul was imprinted with the power of God tribulation lightning, and after a long time, Zhao Feng's soul had even started to gain some intent of destruction. Your state of existence and soul are stronger than I expected, but you'll only be on the verge of death for a bit longer. The Emperor of Death's voice sounded in the soul dimension. Part of the Emperor of Death's soul was pulled out, but his eyes were still locked onto Zhao Feng. Limitless intent of death surrounded Zhao Feng and slowly devoured him. At the same time, 1,000 miles away. Ninth Prince, be careful. Olding warned. Zhao Feng, I'll help you. The Ninth Prince's voice sounded without any hesitation. The Ninth Prince was holding the pseudo-crown prince seal in his hand, and an invisible golden light surrounded the Ninth Prince's body. There were many dragons within the light. The Ninth Prince relied on the protection of the draconic providence to enter the area where the Emperor of Death and Zhao Feng were fighting. Ninth Prince. Zhao Feng was slightly stunned. At this moment, Zhao Feng, who was using the gaze of death, could feel the Ninth Prince and the pseudo-crown prince seal in his hand. The light of the pseudo-crown prince seal had weakened slightly. It had probably used up a lot of energy fighting against Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Otherwise, the battle between Olding, the Ninth Prince, and company wouldn't have ended so quickly against Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Ninth Prince, don't come over. Zhao Feng conserved his soul will and spoke in a weak voice. Draconic providence could be converted into draconic providence in the hands of the royal bloodline to increase one's combat strength. However, the Ninth Prince didn't specialize in the soul, so he wouldn't be able to affect the battle much. Instead, he would be wasting his draconic providence. You don't specialize in the soul. Even if you use your draconic providence to increase your battle power, You won't be able to affect me. The Emperor of Death snickered coldly and completely ignored the ninth prince. The ninth prince acted as if he didn't hear what the two said. He slowly approached with the protection of his draconic providence, until he was only 100 miles away from Zhao Feng. A bright white light suddenly shot out from the ninth prince's pseudo-crown prince seal. It left behind a golden mark of a dragon as it descended onto Zhao Feng's body. Wang, a layer of golden light surrounded Zhao Feng along with streaks of dragon-like light. Zhao Feng, this is as far as I can help you. After doing all that, the ninth prince took the pseudo-crown prince seal, which had dimmed once more, and quickly retreated. Damn it, this brat. The Emperor of Death cursed. This layer of draconic providence contained a unique power that was comparable to destruction and death, and it instantly reduced the power of the Emperor of Death's gaze of death. Zhao Feng's eyes became extremely determined as he circulated his eye intent and dragged the Emperor of Death's soul with him. Unfortunately, this draconic providence could only protect him temporarily. If Zhao Feng could use this draconic providence, he would be able to increase the power of the gaze of the God Eye. Even the power of draconic providence will be destroyed eventually. The Emperor of Death harumphed coldly as the soul eye bloodline technique of death in his eyes became stronger. Wang, the draconic providence around Zhao Feng's body started to dim. However, at this moment, the corrosion of Zhao Feng's body and soul was very small. This won't do. The Emperor of Death's gaze of death uses the intent of death to the extreme. On the other hand, my gaze of the God Eye is only infused with the Tao of illusion. With the Emperor of Death's current soul intent, he can completely ignore my illusion. Zhao Feng used this short period of safety to quickly think of a plan. Not even sacred kings could enter the imperial tombs, so the power of the god-slaying arrow obviously couldn't be used by sacred kings. Furthermore, even if he did use the god-slaying arrow, it wouldn't truly kill the Emperor of Death, so it would be pointless. However, what other way did Zhao Feng have to deal with this life and death situation? What? You've given up? Ha ha. The Emperor of Death started to laugh as he felt the attraction of Zhao Feng's gaze of the God Eye weaken. Break. The Emperor of Death's cold voice sounded. The draconic providence around Zhao Feng was also eroded away by the intent of death. In a flash, boundless death energy once more wrapped around Zhao Feng like thousands of venomous snakes. Life force disappeared and his soul withered. The Eye of Death contains the intent of death, but what about my God Eye? A question appeared in Zhao Feng's heart as he sensed the limitless power of death around him. If that's the case, Zhao Feng's left eye suddenly flashed with a mysterious light, and his golden hair started to float in the wind. The mysterious golden ball within the dimension of his left eye started to tremble, and a golden ripple that seemed to contain the essence of everything in the world started to spread through the air. God Eye disintegration. A weird purple and gold light started to spin in Zhao Feng's left eye, and it seemed to flash through all the particles that Zhao Feng had obtained from disintegrating them. Wang, the suction force that was pulling the Emperor of Death into Zhao Feng's left eye suddenly disappeared. Layers of transparent golden ripples spread from Zhao Feng's left eye and instantly pierced through the Emperor of Death thousands of times. What? This is? The suction force from Zhao Feng's left eye disappeared, and the Emperor of Death's soul returned to the body of the black-robed man. However, these layers of mysterious and profound golden light waves of unknown power made him very uncomfortable. Suddenly, the Emperor of Death realized that his body was disappearing bit by bit. Tiny particles that couldn't even be seen by the naked eye started to disappear, as if they never existed. At the same time, the Emperor of Death's soul also started to disappear. Everything that belonged to the Emperor of Death was disappearing. What kind of power is this? The Emperor of Death cried out in fear. His death power Upanishad could make all matter and souls age and perish. However, the Emperor of Death couldn't see through the mysterious power that Zhao Feng was displaying. It was like a person watching his own hands suddenly disappear, his feet suddenly disappear, and everything related to him disappeared from the world. In the end, nothing would be left of the Emperor of Death, and he would disappear from this dimension. Wang, the mysterious golden ball within the dimension of Zhao Feng's left eye released countless ripples of golden light that merged into his left eye. Eye intent is being used up so quickly. Zhao Feng jumped up in fright. The God Eye disintegration instantly used the power within the mysterious golden ball to disintegrate the Emperor of Death's body. Logically speaking, its power was on par with the Emperor of Death's gaze of death. However, facing the power of death, both Xiaofeng's body and soul had ways to fight back. As for the Death Emperor, he could only watch as everything he had gradually disappeared. Very soon, the Emperor of Death's body was completely disintegrated, leaving only his soul floating in the air. However, Zhao Feng could still see that the particles of the samsara immortal body that had been disintegrated were still slowly gathering and trying to recover his body. However, with the help of Zhao Feng's God Eye disintegration, the recovery speed of the samsara immortal body wasn't as fast as the speed of disintegration. Emperor of Death, slowly disappear from this world. Zhao Feng's cold voice sounded. How is this possible? Even if your God's Eye awakens again, it shouldn't have such a weird power. The Emperor of Death roared in fear. The reason why he was afraid was because the samsara immortal body that had disappeared hadn't recovered. The Emperor of Death even suspected that the slowly disappearing samsara immortal body would revive in the samsara of death. On the other hand, Zhao Feng was still able to resist the Emperor of Death's gaze of death. Although Zhao Feng's sacred lightning body had completely disappeared, and his body was starting to become skinny, the lifespan of his soul had decreased by several thousand years. The Emperor of Death's body had disappeared. His soul was starting to become transparent, but the Emperor of Death's entire body had disappeared. The disappearance of his soul caused his soul power to weaken, and the power of the gaze of death also started to decrease. Zhao Feng felt that his powerful eye intent was about to be used up, and a piercing pain came from his left eye. If this continued, Zhao Feng would lose even more eye intent, and even if the Emperor of Death was completely disintegrated, he would still revive in the samsara of death. Zhao Feng's eye intent once again activated the mysterious golden ball. The golden ripple started to speed up under the vision of his left eye. The Emperor of Death's soul started to disappear even faster. The Emperor of Death, who had an immortal soul and body, had never been so scared before. My samsara immortal body still hasn't recovered. The Emperor of Death's eyes suddenly stopped using the gaze of death. Run! The Emperor of Death's soul turned into a streak of gray light and tried to escape. You want to run? Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as he used the gaze of the God Eye again, ignoring the fact that his eye intent was being used up. A powerful suction force appeared from Zhao Feng's purple and golden left eye. Zhao Feng was prepared for this. He wouldn't let the Emperor of Death's Yuan soul escape so easily like last time. Once the Emperor of Death entered the dimension of his left eye, Zhao Feng would imprison him and prevent his soul from dying. That way, the Emperor of Death wouldn't be able to revive in the samsara of death. However, a ripple suddenly appeared in the dimension of space, and it radiated an ultimate power that couldn't be defied. A pair of hellish eyes slowly appeared above the Emperor of Death's soul. Within them, there was a circle of black lines that spun endlessly like the cycle of life and death. His life and death will be controlled by the samsara of death. Chapter 970. His life and death will be controlled by the samsara of death. Above the Emperor of Death's soul, a pair of hellish eyes slowly appeared. Within them, there was a circle of black runes that seemed to be the cycle of life and death that spun endlessly. Everything within 1,000 miles fell back into the abyss of samsara as soon as it escaped from Zhao Feng's God Eye and intent of death. The entire world became dark, as if it would forever be imprisoned there. When Zhao Feng saw the pair of dark yellow eyes, he seemed to see his past and present life. The black lines in the eyes were like the path of his life, and they contained an unfathomable philosophy of life and death. This is the eyes of samsara? Zhao Feng was stunned. The eyes of samsara had the ability to make one's soul immortal and create a samsara immortal body. There were even other abilities that Zhao Feng didn't know about. At this moment, the power of the eyes of samsara had descended into the imperial tombs. However, the target of the eyes of samsara wasn't Zhao Feng. It was the Emperor of Death. A powerful eye intent suddenly shot out from the eyes of samsara, and even Zhao Feng's soul intent became dazed. The eyes of samsara suddenly released a suction force from the samsara eye. The Emperor of Death's soul slowly broke free from the suction force of Zhao Feng's gaze of the God Eye, and was pulled upward by an even stronger suction force. The suction force of this samsara surpassed Zhao Feng's gaze of the God Eye. After all, Zhao Feng had used the God Eye disintegration before, and almost all of Zhao Feng's eye intent had been used up. At this moment, Zhao Feng was using all of his eye intent. At the same time, the Emperor of Death's samsara immortal body started to condense in the air and slowly recover before wrapping around the Emperor of Death's soul. After all, Zhao Feng had already stopped using the God Eye disintegration. Seeing this, the Emperor of Death let out a breath. He originally thought that the samsara immortal body wouldn't reappear. From the looks of it, not even Zhao Feng's transformed God Eye could kill him, who had fallen into the samsara of death. Zhao Feng, my pursuit will never stop. Once you leave the imperial tombs, I will enter a sacred lord-level samsara immortal body and wait for you. The Emperor of Death followed the attraction of the eyes of samsara, and slowly broke free from Zhao Feng's gaze of the God Eye, and entered the samsara of death. Zhao Feng's face was gloomy, and his eyes were burning with anger. The Emperor of Death's soul had reached the early stages of the mystic light realm. If he obtained the samsara immortal body, his battle power would increase dramatically. At that time, not only would the Emperor of Death's soul be extremely powerful, but his physical power of death would also pose a great threat to Zhao Feng. After all, Zhao Feng's sacred lightning body didn't have an indestructible body. If it was destroyed, Zhao Feng would have to steal someone else's body and recultivate. As the Emperor of Death's soul and samsara immortal body slowly entered the eyes of samsara, Zhao Feng's expression changed dramatically, and his eyes became filled with determination. Zhao Feng's left eye stopped circulating, and the gaze of the God Eye stopped. Hee. The Emperor of Death couldn't help but laugh mockingly when he saw Zhao Feng stop the gaze of the God Eye. He belonged to the samsara of death, and even if Zhao Feng was in his complete state, the gaze of the God Eye wouldn't be able to resist the attraction of the samsara of death. However, suddenly, Zhao Feng's left eye opened, and a faint golden beam of light shot out and landed on the Emperor of Death's soul, passing through it. What is this? The Emperor of Death paused for a moment. This power that didn't seem to be physical or soul-like passed through everything and didn't affect him at all. It was as if it didn't exist in this dimension. However, so what if it did affect him? The Emperor of Death completely ignored Zhao Feng's useless attempt and smiled. The Emperor of Death's soul had fallen into the samsara of death, and after obtaining a samsara immortal body, he would never die. What could Zhao Feng do to him? Disintegrate. Zhao Feng lightly spat out 2 words as the faint golden beam of light shot out from his left eye and drew a circle around the Emperor of Death's right eye. After using the God Eye disintegration on the Emperor of Death before, he wasn't affected at all. The Emperor of Death, who had a disdainful expression, suddenly felt a weird feeling in his soul. The Emperor of Death's expression changed dramatically. With his left eye, he saw a strange and terrifying scene. He actually saw his right eye floating out. His eye of death was inherited through his soul, so even though his soul had been revived, he still had the eye of death. At this moment, there was a hole in the Emperor of Death's soul where his right eye should be. The eye of death floated in the air in front of his soul. Spatial movement. The space around the right eye of death started to ripple. The Emperor of Death seemed to think of something, and fear appeared on his face. Although the right eye of death had left his soul, it still contained his soul intent. Explode. Self-destruct. The Emperor of Death could still communicate with the right eye of death. As long as he destroyed the right eye of death, it would appear once more in the samsara of death. However, in the next instant, the right eye of death disappeared. The connection between the Emperor of Death and the right eye of death also disappeared. Zhao Feng, my eye of death. Where did you hide my eye of death? The Emperor of Death roared as his face twisted like a madman after failing to detonate the eye of death. He had always been the one chasing after Zhao Feng and trying to take the 9th god's eye. However, his right eye of death had been taken by Zhao Feng. He couldn't accept this blow. He knew the abilities of Zhao Feng's god eye, so Zhao Feng must have hidden his left eye somewhere. How is this possible? You actually dug out my eye of death? This is impossible. The Emperor of Death almost went crazy. His soul and body started to struggle as he tried to break free from the suction of the eyes of samsara, and charged toward Zhao Feng, as if he wanted to eat Zhao Feng alive. He couldn't understand what kind of power this mysterious ray of light possessed to be able to separate his eye of death from his soul. The Emperor of Death struggled and circulated his intent of death to resist the eyes of samsara. However, how could the Emperor of Death break free from the eyes of samsara? Zhao Feng, give me back my eye of death. The Emperor of Death was sucked into the eyes of samsara. Hehe, remember to give me the other eye of death the next time you come. Zhao Feng's joyful voice sounded as he expressed his gratitude to the Emperor of Death. After losing one of his eyes of death, the power of the gaze of death decreased dramatically. Even if he had an initial stage samsara immortal body next time, Zhao Feng wouldn't need to be scared. The eyes of samsara glanced at Zhao Feng after absorbing the Emperor of Death before slowly closing and disappearing into the air. Eyes of samsara. Zhao Feng muttered as he descended from the air and sat down on the ground. His eye intent and the mysterious golden ball had been used up long ago, but Zhao Feng still managed to use the gaze of the god eye and disintegration at the very end. At this moment, a piercing pain and fatigue washed over Zhao Feng's left eye. Zhao Feng immediately ate some precious herbs. At this moment, he was extremely weak. After being eroded by the intent of death, both his soul and his state of existence had decreased. Luckily, Zhao Feng's foundations were extremely stable, and he would be able to recover in a short amount of time as long as he took care of himself. Zhao Feng quickly circulated the wood of wind lightning and used the herbs to heal his body and soul. After a while, his skinny body slowly recovered to its original state. Zhao Feng's recovery speed was extremely strong. As long as he had enough life force, he would be able to recover on his own. I wonder what use the eyes of death will have for me. Zhao Feng's consciousness instantly entered the dimension of his left eye. An eye of death floated above the mysterious golden ball in a soul-like state. There was also the Emperor of Death's soul intent within it, but it was completely suppressed. I'll use the power of God Tribulation Lightning to get rid of the intent of death within it after I recover. However, the soul state eye of death, Zhao Feng murmured. Zhao Feng had once obtained a remnant of the eye-stealing forbidden technique from the three-eyed saint's interspatial ring. There was only some theoretical knowledge on it, and it didn't have any practical experience. Furthermore, the theoretical knowledge was only the analysis of the eye-stealing forbidden technique. What Zhao Feng had obtained now was a soul state eye of death. If I fail, I might destroy the eye of death, which would be the same as returning the eye of death to the Emperor of Death. Zhao Feng's heart dropped. Even if Zhao Feng had the complete eye-stealing technique, he didn't dare to use it rashly. In the end, Zhao Feng could only place the eye of death in the dimension of his god eye. At the very least, the Emperor of Death had been dealt with. He only had one eye of death, so he didn't pose much of a threat to Zhao Feng. In a sea of emerald green bamboos, an illusionary eye of samsara appeared in front of an elder. A black-robed figure suddenly descended from the eye of samsara. Your freedom ends here. The elder said calmly. No. Zhao Feng stole my eye of death. I'm going to take it back, and I'm going to take his god eye. The Emperor of Death knelt on the ground and begged in pain. You won't succeed. The elder's expression was calm as he looked into the distance with his dark eyes. No, if you had given me a beginning stage mystic light realm samsara immortal body from the start, I wouldn't have lost. The Emperor of Death roared. He was filled with hatred and unwillingness. The black patterns in the old man's eyes suddenly spun. Arg no! The black symbols on the Emperor of Death's body and soul started to flash with a dark yellow light, and an irresistible power of samsara was released. The Emperor of Death's body and soul started to twist and slowly tear apart. Boom! The Emperor of Death's body and soul started to shatter under this inhumane torture. The next instant, a black figure faintly appeared in the elder's eye of samsara. The elder then slowly walked toward a bamboo room. Disciple, tell me about your dream yesterday. Okay. Within the bamboo room was a girl wearing a faint green shirt. She had a pair of clear eyes, and her hair was like willow leaves that floated in the wind. She gave off a calm and peaceful feeling when she smiled. In the dream, my father, the city lord, told me to have a martial contest to find a spouse. When the contest was about to end, a one-eyed youth with azure hair came. I can't remember his name. Chapter 971. When the forbidden power disappeared, the members of the Ninth Prince's team immediately entered. The members of the Ninth Prince's team, who were waiting anxiously outside, immediately entered. Zhao Feng. Everyone found that Zhao Feng was sitting cross-legged on a piece of barren land, and their worried hearts instantly relaxed. From the looks of it, Zhao Feng had won. Let's wait here, Olding suggested. The other members didn't disagree. They could feel the terrifying auras of the battle between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death from 1,000 miles away. When they got close, the life force in their bodies would start to fade away. It was hard to imagine what kind of shocking battle Zhao Feng and the black-robed person had fought. And now Zhao Feng was still alive. To them, this was a miracle. Unknowingly, when everyone placed their focus on Zhao Feng. If something happened to Zhao Feng, then this Crown Prince trial would end for them. Your Highness, we still have hope, Olding consoled. The Ninth Prince's pseudo-Crown Prince seal originally had a lot of draconic providence, far more than what he had expected. However, in this unexpected battle against Sacred Lord Dark Soul, he used up a portion of his draconic providence. The Ninth Prince then risked his life to enter the battle between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death to help Zhao Feng use up another portion of his draconic providence. About half of the draconic providence within the Ninth Prince's pseudo-Crown Prince seal had been used up. And as long as Brother Zhao is still alive, there's hope. The Ninth Prince nodded his head. He didn't regret this outcome at all. If it weren't for Zhao Feng's help, he wouldn't have been able to reach this step. Most of the draconic providence within the pseudo-Crown Prince seal was obtained by Zhao Feng. 3 days passed quickly. Let's go. After sitting cross-legged for 3 days, Zhao Feng finally spoke. In reality, Zhao Feng's injuries had already healed, but the weakening of his soul took a while for Zhao Feng to recover. Fortunately, the power of the ancient lightning within the charred black wood had a great nourishing effect on Zhao Feng's soul. Perhaps this was the uniqueness of the lightning soul constitution. It allowed one to recover from injuries on the soul level by absorbing the power of lightning. At the same time, Zhao Feng realized that his battle with the Emperor of Death had laid a solid foundation for his undying sacred lightning body. Back then, Zhao Feng couldn't complete the undying sacred lightning body quickly, so he put it aside. After such a long time, and with the help of the Emperor of Death's intent of death, he could finally start cultivating. Everyone was shocked. Zhao Feng had already recovered? Such a terrifying opponent, such a fierce battle, and Zhao Feng treated himself. And it only took 3 days? As a doctor, even Zhou Suer was shocked as she inspected Zhao Feng. She only felt relieved after confirming that Zhao Feng did not have any serious injuries. Zhao Feng, what about the Emperor of Death? Olding asked. He was also stunned when he found out the black-robed person's true identity, and that he had a samsara body. His body was undying, his soul had reached the level of a sacred lord, and he had the eyes of samsara. Even normal sacred lords wouldn't be able to fight back against the Emperor of Death. However, after the battle ended, Zhao Feng was the only one left. Olding could only sigh. He would never be able to see through this youth in front of him. The other members also looked at Zhao Feng. Although it was obvious that Zhao Feng had won, they wanted to hear it from Zhao Feng's own mouth. I'm leaving. Zhao Feng gave a simple answer. Leaving? Everyone paused for a moment. This answer didn't let them know who won. Then Zhao Feng, stay in the Imperial Palace after you leave the Imperial Tombs. Olding started to think. This time, Zhao Feng might have won, but the Emperor of Death was undying. However, the Emperor of Death was unkillable, so it was possible for him to revive in the samsara of death the instant he died. Zhao Feng would only be safe if he stayed in the Imperial Palace. That's right. No matter who wins or loses, Brother Zhao can stay with me for now. The Ninth Prince immediately agreed. We'll see when the time comes. Zhao Feng didn't agree or reject Olding and the Ninth Prince's good intentions. He wasn't sure what he would do after leaving the Imperial Tombs. Would he stay in the Imperial Palace and hide from Nine Darkness Palace? Would he return to the Ocean Smoke Pavilion? Or would he search for the Eyes of Samsara? Zhao Feng still remembered what the 6 Warlock Divine Sage said. The only way to confirm Lu Qinxin's location is to find the Eyes of Samsara. The Eyes of Samsara might have the ability to do that, But Zhao Feng didn't know much about it. However, Zhao Feng wasn't sure if the eyes of Samsara were friend or foe because of the Emperor of Death. Within the 7th Prince's metallic city. Should we go and confirm whether Zhao Feng is dead or alive? Jiang Hao asked. Are you crazy? Zhao Feng is definitely dead. Even I don't dare to get close to the black-robed person. A quasi-sacred lord immediately exclaimed. After Sacred Lord Dark Soul returned, he was sent to approach the location where Zhao Feng and the black-robed person were fighting. He wasn't even able to see the person before he was scared back by the terrifying intent of death. But the black-robed person didn't come back either. Jiang Hao wasn't courteous towards this quasi-sacred lord. Jiang Hao's words silenced all the people in the crowd. The 9th Prince's team and the black-robed person hadn't come back. This was weird. Don't worry. Even if Zhao Feng is still alive, he's heavily injured. It's impossible for him to attack us. Sacred Lord Dark Soul knew the black-robed person's mastery of the soul the best, so he had a confident expression. Zhao Feng was the most important beast tamer in this battle. Now that his soul was injured, he couldn't control the beasts. The 9th Prince and Zhao Feng are here. Zhang Yi's voice suddenly sounded. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's expression became dark. He regretted what he just said. Zhang Yi and a doctor were taking care of the beasts outside. The beasts that had been eroded by the intent of death would die very soon if they weren't treated. He didn't expect to see this scene because of this. He looked at Zhao Feng in fear. What kind of monster is he? Whoosh. The members of the 7th Prince's team immediately went to the city walls and looked into the distance. Zhao Feng is fine? The quasi-sacred lord that was sent out but didn't even see Zhao Feng, or the Emperor of Death, was surprised. Impossible. The black-robed person specializes in the intent of death. Zhao Feng's soul should be heavily injured. At the very least, it won't be easy for him to control the beasts. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's dark eyes looked at Zhao Feng. Even he was slightly scared of the black-robed person. He wasn't willing to admit that Zhao Feng was fine. From the looks of it, this battle is unavoidable. The scholar looked at the members of the 9th Prince's team and came to a conclusion from their expressions. The return of the 9th Prince's team also shocked the other Heaven's Legacy cities and the other 3 Princes' teams. The black-robed person and Sacred Lord Dark Soul chased after the 9th Prince's team. But no one from the 9th Prince's team died? The 2nd Prince's expression changed. How is that possible? The black-robed person? He didn't come back. The 13th Prince had an ugly expression as killing intent appeared in his eyes as he looked at Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng. Battle intent surged in Yu Tianhao's eyes. It seems like no one can do anything to him. The 8th Prince sighed. The 9th Prince's team arrived outside the 7th Prince's Heaven's Legacy city once more. The 9th Prince's team wasn't mocked by anyone. The 7th Prince's team was ready for battle. His soul. Sacred Lord Dark Soul inspected Zhao Feng closely and found that Zhao Feng didn't seem to be injured, and the aura of his soul was extremely strong. Attack at full force. Our main target is Zhao Feng. We just need to break his control over the beasts. The scholar immediately messaged the members of the team and told them the plan. Zhao Feng, is there any problem? Olding asked. He knew that the battle between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death would definitely be a battle of the soul. Zhao Feng nodded his head. Attack at full force. Zhao Feng's eyes were calm. No one would stop him this time. He would take over this Heaven's Legacy city. Hearing what Zhao Feng said, everyone became excited. They knew that Zhao Feng would take out all his beasts and show them the strength of the 9th Prince's team. Go! The scholar roared, and all the members instantly charged out. A terrifying magnificent power crushed forward, and their target was Zhao Feng. Zhang Yi also ordered the beasts to get into formation. Zhao Feng's expression didn't change as he looked at the 7th Prince's team and waved his left hand. Boom! A terrifying beast aura suddenly appeared outside the 7th Prince's city wall. This terrifying aura instantly shattered the charge of the 7th Prince's team. This fierce aura made everyone feel as if this place had become a kingdom of beasts, and they had become prey. A group of beasts completely surrounded the 7th Prince's city wall. Venomous black-striped scorpions, wind wolves, night wolves, red-headed ice snakes, winged wolves, 7 sky-shaking golden apes, and several emperor-level rare beasts. The people that charged out from the 7th Prince's city wall stopped, and almost tripped and fell to the ground. At the back, Zhang Yi, who was still arranging his troops, fell to the ground. The beasts he controlled retreated in panic and howled. How many beasts are there? Zhang Yi's voice trembled in disbelief. Moreover, these demonic beasts were all from the immemorial dream realm. They were ferocious and not ordinary. At this moment, a chubby green crystal silkworm slowly flew out from Zhao Feng's hand. A terrifying primordial aura descended upon the place. The countless beasts around Zhao Feng instantly roared, and limitless fierce auras shook heaven and earth. In an instant, this beast from the 10,000 ancient races bloodline became the leader of all the beasts. They were willing to submit to the pure ancient bloodline of the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly and fight for it. What should we do? The 7th Prince's face instantly paled as he looked at the scholar. Everyone fight but change the plan. The scholar took a deep breath. Change the target to the 9th Prince. Force him with all your might and even threaten his life. The scholar's firm voice sounded in everyone's mind. The 7th Prince paused for a moment and understood what the scholar was trying to do. As long as the 9th Prince used the pseudo-crown prince seal to ask for help, everything would end. It would be pointless no matter how many beasts Zhao Feng had. Chapter 972. When a terrifying demonic beast aura appeared outside the 7th Prince's steel city wall. The 7th Prince was not the only one who was dumbfounded. The members of the other 3 Tianji cities, the alliance of the 3 princes outside the Tianji city in the west, and all the spectators in the Great Qian dynasty, were all stunned by this scene. How can there be so many beasts? The 5th Prince looked into the distance in a daze. He regretted not having asked the 2nd Prince to invite the 9th Prince. It would be extremely easy for such a beast horde to break through the 8th Prince's city walls. Furthermore, the 9th Prince's team wasn't weak either. No undead appeared when facing the black-robed figure, and Sacred Lord Dark Soul. From the looks of it, Zhao Feng really thinks that attacking us is pointless. The 8th Prince next to Luo Xun paused for a moment before speaking with a smile. He regretted not befriending Zhao Feng back then, but he felt lucky that he didn't become enemies with Zhao Feng. The 7th Prince wasn't the only one who was scared of the 9th Prince's team. Even the 13th Prince and the 4th Prince's teams were stunned. Is he really a beast tamer? Xian Yuanwen had a solemn expression. Xian Yuanwen didn't want to fight with such a terrifying beast tamer. Even if he had a substandard god weapon. Xian Yuanwen didn't want to fight with Zhao Feng in his current state. This Zhao Feng, Sacred Lord Black Demon from 9 Darkness Palace, had an ugly expression. He started to suspect that when he fought with Zhao Feng hadn't used his full strength. At the very least, he hadn't let out a single beast. The Great Gon Lord Dynasty's Imperial Palace became chaotic. Could this be Zhao Feng's beast-taming abilities? There are so many beasts. This is going to be interesting. The 7th Prince has 2 Sacred Lords on his side. Many of the experts present sighed in shock. Only the 9th Prince's hall was filled with excitement. The experts that were suspicious of Zhao Feng at the start were now ashamed. I didn't expect Zhao Feng's beast-taming abilities to be so strong. The 9th Prince's team was holding back at the start. I think that the 9th Prince has some hope. An elder's eyes lit up. Duke Namfeng also smiled and nodded his head. He chose to stand on the 9th Prince's side, because he wanted to return the favor to Zhao Feng. He didn't think about whether or not the 9th Prince could become the Crown Prince. However, from his point of view, the 9th Prince had a chance. Perhaps in the end, he would be the one who benefited from following Zhao Feng. When facing the 9th Prince's team and the large number of beasts, the 9th Prince's team wouldn't be able to do anything. The 7th Prince's team finally understood that they had underestimated the 9th Prince's team. This would be a tough battle. Zhang Yi, try your best to contain Zhao Feng's beast horde. The scholar immediately took command of the battle. All right. Zhang Yi's face turned red. He couldn't care less about Zhao Feng's ability to tame and control beasts. He only wanted to win and defend the city. This time, all members of the 7th Prince's team were ready for battle. Be careful, they're coming. Olding exclaimed. Although Zhao Feng had a lot of demonic beasts, they didn't have any top experts on their side. If the 7th Prince's team chose to defend the city, they might have a bigger advantage. However, the scholar saw through the situation and chose to attack first. Protect Zhao Feng. Olding thought for a moment and said. Normally speaking, protecting the beast tamer was the most important thing in this battle. However, the beast tamer in their team was the strongest. Shirulei, keep an eye on those two from Sky Sword Pavilion. Olding gave Shirulei a mission. Shirulei specialized in physical defense, which countered Sky Sword Pavilion's domineering sword Dao attacks. Olding and Su Qingling kept an eye on Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Okay. Shirulei immediately locked onto Sacred Lord Sharp Edge and Lu Tianqi. He was naturally no match for these two, but Shirulei only needed to do his best to block the attacks of these two sword masters. Whoosh. Apart from the 7th Prince and Zhang Yi, the other 6 members of the 7th Prince's team all charged out. At first glance, their target was Zhao Feng. As I thought. Old Ying's expression became grim. The 7th Prince's team's main target was still Zhao Feng when facing such a large beast horde. Zhao Feng, watch out. Olding warned. After all, Zhao Feng wasn't at his peak state yet. I'm fine. Zhao Feng wasn't worried at all as he circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Boom. All the beasts around him made their moves and charged toward the 7th Prince's city wall. Only 7 sky-shaking golden apes were left behind. What? This brat is telling the beasts to attack at full power? Sacred Lord Dark Soul was surprised. Logically speaking, all of them were pretending to attack Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng would leave a large number of beasts to defend. However, he only left 7 sky-shaking golden apes behind. This situation was very different from the analysis of the Confucian scholar. Master Zhang Yi, defend. The 7th Prince's heart dropped when he saw the beasts charging over. Okay. Zhang Yi circulated his soul intent and controlled the beasts to block the city gates. You're courting death. Do you think just 7 sky-shaking golden apes can stop our attacks? Sacred Lord Sharp Edge had an enraged expression as he waved the white jade sword in his hand, and a series of sword images shot into the sky with limitless sword intent. Who? Sacred Lord Sharp Edge slashed out, and limitless sword images and sword intent instantly condensed into one and formed an illusionary white sword. The sharp sword intent seemed to be able to pierce through everything. Let me. Shirulei raised the giant dark yellow shield with both hands and walked in front of Zhao Feng. The dragon head engraving on the giant dark yellow shield suddenly lit up and gave off the faint roar of a dragon. Golden sand flowed out of the mouth of the dragon head and slowly formed a wall of sand. You won't be able to stop it. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge harumphed coldly in disdain. Boom. The illusionary white sword broke through the sand wall. Boom. All of a sudden, an astonishing physical strength shattered the remaining power of the white heavenly sword. Who? A dazzling golden blue metal giant dashed out. The powerful physical pressure instantly shocked the other 5 people. What? That's Zhao Feng? Sacred Lord Sharp Edge's expression turned to surprise. A body-strengthening expert? Lu Tianqi, a member of the younger generation from Sky Sword Pavilion, exclaimed. How laughable. You're a beast tamer, but you're the one fighting? Sacred Lord Sharp Edge roared as he slashed down another beam of sword light toward Zhao Feng. The other 5 from the 7th Prince's team also charged out and pretended to attack Zhao Feng while waiting for a good chance to attack the 9th Prince together. Shirulei charged forward once more and used the defensive abilities of his inheritance sacred weapon to block most of the power of Sacred Lord Sharp Edge's sword light. Roar. Roar. 7 sky-shaking golden apes instantly roared and leaped out from beside Zhao Feng toward the 5 experts from the 7th Prince's team. You guys stall Sacred Lord Sharp Edge. Zhao Feng messaged the others. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge seemed to be slightly stronger out of the 2 Sacred Lords on the 7th Prince's team. However, Su Qingling, who specialized in the soul, was too weak and wasn't able to stop Sacred Lord Dark Soul. On the other hand, Shirulei's bloodline and defensive inheritance sacred weapon were able to stall Sacred Lord Sharp Edge's attacks. Okay. The 9th Prince and company didn't doubt Zhao Feng's words at all. They all moved out and blocked Sacred Lord Sharp Edge. Sacred Lord Dark Soul, Jianghao, Lu Tianqi, and company from the 7th Prince's team paused for a moment when they saw this. What's the meaning of this? The scholar's expression froze. Apart from Zhao Feng, everyone from the 9th Prince's team went to block Sacred Lord Sharpedge and ignored them. In this situation, should they suddenly attack the 9th Prince or deal with Zhao Feng, who had no one to protect him? The scholar started to think. Roar! At this moment, the 7 sky-shaking golden apes charged over. Fuck off! Lu Tianqi gave a loud shout and slashed out with countless overbearing and cold sword lights. Ice magic spear. Jianghao quickly stabbed out with his white spear, and countless white shadows containing cold sharpness shot towards the sky-shaking golden apes. However, the sky-shaking golden ape's body was huge, and its defense was astonishing. It forcefully resisted the two's attacks and punched out with both fists. Sacred Lord Dark Soul, kill Zhao Feng. The scholar quickly made a decision. Lu Tianqi and Jianghao were responsible for restraining the 7 sky-shaking golden apes. Therefore, only the scholar, Sacred Lord Dark Soul, and another quasi-sacred lord were left. Although the situation in front of him looked like a trap. However, he didn't believe that the 3 of them couldn't deal with a king beast tamer. Hee, aren't you guys going back to defend the city? Zhao Feng suddenly smiled. Go back and help Master Zhang Yi. The scholar's expression changed slightly as he ordered the quasi-sacred lord. Zhao Feng had only left 7 sky-shaking golden apes behind, while the rest of the demonic beasts were attacking the city. Zhang Yi and the 7th Prince were naturally unable to stop them. If the city wall was broken, the 7th Prince would be surrounded by the beasts and they would lose. At this moment, the 7th Prince and Zhang Yi were defending the city wall, and the situation was extremely dangerous. The quasi-sacred lord flew toward the city wall. Whoosh! The scholar and Sacred Lord Dark Soul instantly charged toward Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng looked at the 2 of them and gave a faint smile. The cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly next to him opened its mouth and spat out colorful silk that instantly shot through the air and covered the area within a few thousand feet. However, the scholar and Sacred Lord Dark Soul were already prepared. They either dodged or destroyed the silk as they continued to charge toward Zhao Feng. You think the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly can stop us? Sacred Lord Dark Soul snickered coldly as his soul power surged. However, Jianghao's exclamation suddenly sounded from behind them. Damn it, what's this? Jianghao's vision was blocked by the sky-shaking golden apes, so he wasn't on guard and was caught by the silk. On the other side, Lu Tianqi was also caught by the silk and became less agile. The scholar's expression became grim. He suddenly understood that the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly's attack wasn't targeted at them. This youth. The scholar suddenly had a weird feeling when he saw the calm expression on Zhao Feng's face. It was as if the moment he changed his mind and attacked Zhao Feng, this youth had already taken control of the battle. Sacred Lord Dark Soul, finish this quickly. The scholar messaged Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Zhao Feng's calm expression made him annoyed. However, right after he said that, Hu Wang, a pair of scarlet wings of lightning spread behind Zhao Feng's back, and he turned into a bolt of red and white lightning as he charged toward them. What? He's attacking first. The scholar's expression turned to surprise. This youth's actions were extremely weird. He couldn't guess what he was doing. You're courting death. Sacred Lord Dark Soul was enraged as well. He circulated his soul power, and a dark gray short sword in his hand slashed out a dark ripple. Chapter 973. You're courting death. Sacred Lord Dark Soul was enraged as well. His soul power surged, and a dark gray short sword in his hand slashed out a faint black ripple. This black ripple was extremely thin, but it was like a sharp blade that flashed through the air and gave off a soul-shaking aura. Sacred Lord Dark Soul didn't believe that Zhao Feng, a measly king, could finish off the black-robed person. It was definitely the 9th Prince's team that helped Zhao Feng defeat the black-robed person after pushing him back. On the other side, the scholar unleashed golden white palms that worked together with Sacred Lord Dark Soul's soul attack. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhao Feng didn't dodge their attacks. It was as if he didn't even see them as he charged toward the scholar. You're really courting death. Sacred Lord Dark Soul couldn't help but laugh mockingly. Even normal sacred lords wouldn't dare to ignore his soul attack. However, the scholar's expression became even more solemn. Zhao Feng's weird actions made him feel extremely uneasy. What kind of beast tamer was there in the world? Not only did he attack a sacred lord, but he was also ignoring their attacks? From the perspective of others, this was courting death. Whoosh! The moment the black ripple touched Zhao Feng's soul, Zhao Feng instantly circulated his soul intent to protect it. However, it was obvious that this wasn't enough to stop Sacred Lord Dark Soul's attack. After Zhao Feng's soul intent was sliced open, the black ripple started to slice toward Zhao Feng's soul. Countless symbols of God Tribulation Lightning instantly flashed within Zhao Feng's soul. All of these symbols of God Tribulation Lightning flowed through Zhao Feng's soul and gathered at the location where the black ripple came from, shattering it. However, from the perspective of others, it was as if Zhao Feng hadn't done anything at all. The soul attack that was slashing toward Zhao Feng disappeared like a stone sinking into the ocean. How is this possible? Sacred Lord Dark Soul felt Zhao Feng circulate his soul intent to block his soul attack. That soul intent was very faint and strong, but it wasn't enough to block his soul attack. Zhao Feng's speed didn't decrease at all. He dealt with Sacred Lord Dark Soul's soul attack and clashed with the scholar's golden white palm. Boom! The golden white palm shadow was directly shattered. Zhao Feng emerged from the white dust cloud. Not good. The scholar's expression changed drastically as he sensed a trace of danger. His and Sacred Lord Dark Soul's attacks were easily blocked by Zhao Feng. At this time, Zhao Feng's target was him. White Jade Soul Sealing Palm. The jade-faced scholar hurriedly pushed out several palm techniques. In that instant, the surrounding world seemed to have fallen into a swamp, and there was even the illusion that time had slowed down. Boom! Several golden palms of light shot out, twisting and distorting as they slammed into Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's speed and movements instantly froze. Taking advantage of this gap, the Confucian scholar moved backwards. This palm technique. Zhao Feng exclaimed. The palm technique that the scholar was using was the same as the sky sealing palm that little Kuan Yin used in the past. However, with the scholar's foundation, this palm technique wasn't able to threaten Zhao Feng at all. Boom! Zhao Feng activated his sacred lightning body once more, and a surge of physical force spread through the air and created thunderous booms. Sacred Lord Dark Soul, what's going on? At this moment, the Confucian scholar immediately asked. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's attack didn't seem to have much effect on Zhao Feng. Leave this brat to me. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's expression became grim, and he didn't explain anything as he charged toward Zhao Feng. He wouldn't be careless this time. His attack was blocked so easily by Zhao Feng. This made him lose face. At this moment, Zhao Feng had just escaped from the scholar's intent. Zhao Feng had a calm expression as he looked at Sacred Lord Dark Soul, and a dark golden light flashed in his left eye. Soul Confusion. A powerful dark purple soul power enveloped Sacred Lord Dark Soul through Zhao Feng's eye intent. What powerful eye intent! Sacred Lord Dark Soul was stunned. He knew that he had underestimated Zhao Feng. Sacred Lord Dark Soul felt his body become light after being hit by Zhao Feng's eye bloodline technique. His sacred power and soul intent became chaotic and uncontrollable. On the other hand, Zhao Feng quickly passed by Sacred Lord Dark Soul and charged toward the scholar. That brat's eye bloodline technique is effective against me? Sacred Lord Dark Soul felt as if his body wasn't listening to him. He wanted to attack as Zhao Feng passed by him, but he was half a beat too slow. What are you doing, Sacred Lord Dark Soul? The scholar had a deadly expression. Sacred Lord Dark Soul brushed past Zhao Feng, and the two of them didn't attack each other. If it wasn't for the fact that the scholar had sensed the undulations of Zhao Feng's eye bloodline technique, he would have thought that Sacred Lord Dark Soul was a spy on the seventh prince's side. However, how could Zhao Feng's eye bloodline technique be effective against Sacred Lord Dark Soul? Make the seventh prince admit defeat. Zhao Feng's voice sounded in the scholar's mind while he was thinking. The scholar instantly felt as if 10,000 bolts of lightning were crashing through his soul, and he felt a numbing pain. When he regained consciousness, a powerful sacred lightning body crushed down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. The scholar's expression was filled with fear as he felt Zhao Feng's mastery of the soul. He finally knew why Sacred Lord Dark Soul was hit by Zhao Feng's eye bloodline technique. The scholar immediately retreated, and a green talisman appeared in his hand. Countless weird talismans were engraved on it, and the powerful undulation of sacred power made even Zhao Feng shake. However, from beginning to end, Zhao Feng was able to see everything that was happening to the scholar. When the scholar took out the azure talisman, Zhao Feng had already made his preparations. Mental energy spike. A cold golden purple crystal spike shot out from Zhao Feng's left eye and charged into the scholar's soul. The piercing pain in the soul stopped the scholar's movements, and he wasn't able to release the talisman. Boom. Zhao Feng flapped his wings and punched out. The terrifying physical force sent the scholar flying into the city wall, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The little thieving cat then landed on Zhao Feng's shoulder and held the green talisman in its paws, as if it was showing off. What? The hearts of the seventh prince and company, who were fighting against the beasts on the city wall, shook when they saw the scholar fly past them, and they looked toward the battle in the distance. Sacred Lord Sharpedge was being held back by the members of the ninth prince's team, and Shi Yulei was the main focus. Adding on the fact that everyone was ganging up on him, Sacred Lord Sharpedge was in a passive situation. Jiang Hao and Lu Tianqi were surrounded by 7 sky-shaking golden apes. After the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly's silk attack succeeded, the two of them started to become weaker. This meant that the person who sent the scholar flying could only be Zhao Feng. Arg! Zhao Feng, I'll kill you! Sacred Lord Dark Soul roared in anger. Zhao Feng had killed the scholar right in front of him. What kind of humiliation was that? Zhao Feng snickered coldly and turned towards Sacred Lord Dark Soul. After taking care of the 7th Prince's team, nothing else would happen. Wind Lightning Eye Flame. A shocking surge of eye bloodline flames appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye. Purple and gold light spun around it, and wisps of dark gold and God Tribulation lightning flashed. Boom. A ball of transparent dark lightning fire with the aura of God Tribulation lightning exploded on Sacred Lord Dark Soul's body. Sacred Lord Dark Soul felt as if 10,000 bolts of lightning were exploding in his body, and the God Tribulation lightning merged into his soul eye bloodline flame was still burning. However, Sacred Lord Dark Soul was a sacred lord that specialized in the soul, and he had a sacred body. Both his soul and body had a strong resistance against the Wind Lightning Eye Flame. The instant he recovered, he slashed out with the short gray sword in his hand in an attempt to stop Zhao Feng's attack. One pitch-black blade after another pierced through the air, slashing toward Zhao Feng from every direction. Boom. Facing Sacred Lord Dark Soul's full-powered attack, Zhao Feng's soul intent shot out with limitless lightning, and clashed against Sacred Lord Dark Soul's attack. The appearance of Zhao Feng's soul intent made everyone fighting feel as if their souls were filled with lightning, and their hearts trembled. This is Zhao Feng's soul intent? Jiang Hao, who was still fighting against the sky-shaking golden ape, couldn't help but take several steps back. So strong. Could Zhao Feng really have finished off the black-robed person himself? Lu Tianqi was stunned. The soul intent that Zhao Feng displayed right now wasn't any weaker than Sacred Lord Dark Soul's. The instant Zhao Feng's soul intent appeared, the green cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly next to him suddenly flapped its transparent wings, and a wave of transparent pollen formed a beautiful whirlwind that swept towards Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Not good. My mystic light sacred power and soul. Sacred Lord Dark Soul was unable to dodge the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly's pollen. The pollen of the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly could pass through the physical dimension and the soul, so it was effective against mystic light realm sacred lords. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure flashed and appeared in front of Sacred Lord Dark Soul, after the dream pollen threatened Sacred Lord Dark Soul. In soul charge. Sacred Lord Dark Soul snickered coldly when Zhao Feng got close, and his Sacred Lord level soul intent turned into a ball of black ghosts that charged forward. It was obvious that the dream pollen didn't have much of an effect on Sacred Lord Dark Soul, and he was purposefully waiting for Zhao Feng to get close. Zhao Feng snickered coldly. He didn't care about Sacred Lord Dark Soul's soul attack and punched out forcefully. In the soul dimension, the symbols of God Tribulation lightning in Zhao Feng's lightning soul body flashed once more and destroyed Sacred Lord Dark Soul's soul intent. The remaining soul intent landed on Zhao Feng's lightning soul body, but the damage was extremely limited. Boom! Sacred Lord Dark Soul was smashed into the ground by Zhao Feng's punch. How is this possible? He managed to block my soul attack again. Sacred Lord Dark Soul had a sacred body, so Zhao Feng's punch didn't do much damage to him. However, Zhao Feng's mastery of the soul shocked Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Although his silver soul charge wasn't in its most complete state, Sacred Lord Dark Soul was stunned. Just as Sacred Lord Dark Soul was smashed into the ground, Zhao Feng arrived in front of him and punched out once more with his sacred lightning body. Arg! Sacred Lord Dark Soul started to scream. Sacred Lord Dark Soul specialized in the soul, so his state of existence was obviously his weakness. You can end this now. Zhao Feng's thunderous voice shook the souls of everyone on the battlefield. The entire battlefield instantly became silent. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's screams became even clearer. Chapter 974. It's time to end this. Zhao Feng's thunderous voice echoed in the soul world of everyone on the battlefield. The members of the 7th Prince's team felt their souls darken, and lightning crackled. Sacred Lord Dark Soul. Jiang Hao's expression changed dramatically as he looked at Sacred Lord Dark Soul, who had been smashed by Zhao Feng. Sacred Lord Dark Soul has also lost. The 7th Prince stood on top of the city wall in a daze. Below the city wall, a terrifying evil aura that blotted out the sky and covered the earth came surging over like a tsunami. Even if Sacred Lord Dark Soul wasn't defeated by Zhao Feng, the 7th Prince and company on the city wall wouldn't be able to stop the beasts. This junior Sacred Lord Sharp Edge also stopped attacking and looked at Zhao Feng. The reason why the 7th Prince's team dared to fight with the 9th Prince's team was because they had 2 Sacred Lords in their team, even though there was such a huge difference in strength between the demonic beasts. However, even though Sacred Lord Dark Soul and the Scholar teamed up, they were quickly defeated by Zhao Feng. No one could imagine what kind of battle had taken place between the 3. However, their gazes slowly turned to the Cloud Silkworm Saint Butterfly and the little thieving cat next to Zhao Feng. Everyone knew that the support abilities of the Cloud Silkworm Saint Butterfly were effective even on Sacred Lords. Thinking about it, that gray cat must also be different from the others. Perhaps Zhao Feng had taken out some other spiritual pets during the battle. Otherwise, Zhao Feng wouldn't have been able to defeat the Scholar and Sacred Lord Dark Soul by himself. But even so, Zhao Feng's own strength had reached an extremely terrifying level. Zhao Feng. Shi Yulei's expression was one of shock and admiration. Olding didn't know what to say. They were all acting according to Zhao Feng's instructions. From their point of view, Zhao Feng was strong and should be able to stall Sacred Lord Dark Soul and the Scholar. All they needed to do was wait for the beast to break through the city walls. However, not long after they stopped Sacred Lord Sharp Edge, Sacred Lord Sharp Edge turned around. Zhao Feng finished off Sacred Lord Dark Soul and the Scholar. Even if Zhao Feng had fully recovered from his injuries, it was impossible for him to recover so quickly. You're not going to leave? Then I'll start a massacre. Zhao Feng looked at the members of the 7th Prince's team, and his sacred lightning body surged with lightning. Sacred Lord Dark Soul, who was still conscious in the crater in front of Zhao Feng, revealed a look of fear. It was obvious that the massacre Zhao Feng was talking about would start with him. The hearts of the 9th Prince's team members started to boil with excitement when they heard that. The members of the 7th Prince's team all had unsightly expressions. Zhao Feng definitely had the qualifications to start a massacre. On the battlefield, the atmosphere was extremely silent. Let's go, 7th Highness. Behind the city wall, the jade-faced Confucian slowly flew up. The clothes on his chest were torn, revealing the defensive armor underneath. But even with the defensive armor, the impact of Zhao Feng's punch was enough to make the jade-faced scholar suffer. We can't beat the 9th Prince without the battle power of a Sacred Lord. There's still 3 days until the end of the 2nd stage. If we conserve our strength now, we might still have a chance. The jade-faced scholar's voice sounded in the minds of the other members. Lu Tianqi, let's go. The jade-white sword in Sacred Lord Sharp Edge's hand disappeared. Lu Tianqi lowered his head in shame and left the battlefield. The seventh prince, Zhang Yi, and company also left the city wall. In reality, they knew that there was no hope the moment Sacred Lord Dark Soul was defeated. It was just that they weren't willing to accept the reality of being defeated by the ninth prince's team. One had to know that the ninth prince was ranked 7th in the intelligence organization, and the 7th prince was ranked 3rd. Victory! The ninth prince looked at the city wall and the weird structures within it. He had heard many imperial uncles talk about the fortuitous encounters in the Four Heavens Legacy cities, but none of them had entered before. The Four Heavens Legacy cities were also the locations of the third stage, the Prince's Games. This meant that the ninth prince had the right to participate in the Prince's Games. Let's go in. The main reason Olding participated in the Crown Prince trial was to help the ninth prince, but at this moment, he was impatient. He had never entered the cities left behind by the Heavens Legacy race before. There would definitely be a lot of information and ancient secrets that no one knew about. The members of the ninth prince's team then excitedly entered the Heavens Legacy city. The situation in the Four Heavens Legacy cities changed for the first time. The one who left was the seventh prince, and the one who entered was the ninth prince. The seventh prince's team lost. Zhao Feng's beast horde has the absolute advantage. No, the important thing is that Sacred Lord Dark Soul was defeated by Zhao Feng. Many experts from the three princes' team were stunned. No one had expected such an outcome. They hadn't even taken down the 8th prince's Heaven's Legacy city yet. On the other hand, the 9th prince's team had defeated the 7th prince, who was ranked even higher. Brother second prince, should we change our target and attack the 9th prince? The 5th prince asked carefully. The 9th prince and the 7th prince's team had just gone through a huge battle. Their beasts were injured, and some of their team members were injured as well. No. There are too many beasts, and Zhao Feng's strength isn't any weaker than normal sacred lords. The second prince shook his head. The Heaven's Legacy city would close for a day when the residents of the Heaven's Legacy city changed. During this period of time, the 9th prince's team might exchange for more beasts and defensive arrays. Furthermore, the 7th prince's team wouldn't give up now that they had left the Heaven's Legacy city. The second prince and company had to be careful. That's good. After all, the third stage isn't about beast hordes. The 9th prince is less of a threat to us. The 13th prince acted like he didn't care and harumphed coldly in the Heaven's Legacy city. What strength? Yu Tianhao's eyes locked onto Zhao Feng. He had seen Zhao Feng's performance in the battle clearly. Although Zhao Feng was only a king, his strength was even more terrifying. There were many metallic buildings not far away from the city. These were the residences prepared for the members. The 9th prince walked into a room and placed his pseudo-crown prince seal on a stone table. The city walls of the Heaven's Legacy city instantly closed. This protection only lasts for one day. There are still 3 days until the end of the second stage. Don't let your guard down, Olding said. Zhao Feng faintly nodded his head. This rule was very humane. It gave the princes' teams that had just gone through a huge battle some time to rest and prepare. Okay. Everyone can go and find their own fortune. You must gather here the next day. Olding had an excited expression on his face, and he quickly left after speaking. Then, everyone left to explore this wondrous city. The Heaven's Legacy city and the world outside the city walls were two completely different worlds. This place was peaceful, prosperous, and mysterious. There would never be a war, and there would never be any danger. Meow. The little thieving cat was very excited as it led the way for Zhao Feng. Just like last time, the duo first went to a bookstore and bought a map of the city. Zhao Feng scanned over the map and realized that this Heaven's Legacy city was slightly smaller than the Heaven's Legacy city of the 18 Corners Pirate Sacred Land. However, when he thought about how there were 4 similar Heaven's Legacy cities, he didn't bother with that. Let's go to the spiritual pet garden first, Zhao Feng said to the little thieving cat. The little thieving cat was slightly helpless. All the resources it had obtained from the ancient dimension were controlled by Zhao Feng, so it could only follow Zhao Feng's steps. Do you want to take care of your pet, train it, or buy it? A short elder puppet slowly walked over. Zhao Feng paused for a moment. He could understand taking care of a pet. It meant leaving the pet here for the spiritual pet garden to heal and take care of it. However, what did train mean? Raising a pet means using a special method to train your pet, strengthen its abilities, or give it new abilities. The elder gave a faint smile as he slowly explained. Zhao Feng nodded his head, indicating that he understood. Raising was to stimulate the inner potential of a pet. However, Zhao Feng felt that it was better to implant a powerful bloodline into the pet. The effect would be better than raising them and it wouldn't take too long. I need 3 emperor-level flying pets. Zhao Feng stated his intentions. Okay. The elder pointed with his hand and a white screen appeared in the air. There were countless images of beasts on it. These images quickly flashed and soon, there were only flying emperor-level pets left on it. This price. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. The beasts on the screen were extremely rare, but the price was much higher than the Heaven's Legacy City that Zhao Feng had entered last time. However, Zhao Feng had a lot of resources and didn't waste time with the elder for 3 emperor-level pets. In the end, Zhao Feng chose 3 rather normal flying beasts. After leaving the spiritual pet garden, 3 pieces of dragon jade appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. The 3 flying beasts then used their claws to grab a piece of dragon jade. Whoosh! The 3 beasts instantly flew into the sky and left the Heaven's Legacy City. These are the last 3 pieces of dragon jade. Zhao Feng said softly. Ever since entering the Imperial Tombs, Zhao Feng had obtained 8 pieces of dragon jade from other groups. When he was with Zhou Su, Zhao Feng gave 4 pieces of dragon jade to the ancient Yao bird and the 3 flying beasts he had tamed in the Imperial Tombs. After meeting up with Old Ing, Zhao Feng tamed a black eagle in the ancient dream realm, and took out another piece of dragon jade. After meeting up with Shinjizi's group, Zhao Feng didn't go find flying beasts because time was tight. Now that they had entered the Heaven's Legacy City, Zhao Feng got rid of the last 3 pieces of dragon jade. I believe that my spiritual pets will give me a surprise in the end. Zhao Feng smiled faintly as he murmured to himself. Dragon jades could only automatically absorb the draconic providence around them. If Zhao Feng held 9 pieces of dragon jade, the total amount of draconic providence he could absorb wouldn't increase. Therefore, Zhao Feng planned to use flying beasts to collect draconic providence from the very beginning. Meow meow. The little thieving cat jumped in front of Zhao Feng. You want to go to the building of blacksmiths? Zhao Feng understood what the little thieving cat wanted. There was still a lot of time left, so Zhao Feng decided to go with the little thieving cat. Meow. The little thieving cat jumped into a tall building. The building of blacksmiths mainly focused on strengthening and customizing machines. What can I do for you? A burly, dark-skinned middle-aged mechanical man said lightly. Chapter 975. How may I be of service to you? A middle-aged dark-skinned robot looked at the little thieving cat and spoke with interest. Meow meow. The little thieving cat took off the dark golden necklace from its neck. The dark golden necklace instantly turned into a dark golden dragon snake whip that twisted in the air. The dark-skinned middle-aged man's eyes lit up as he inspected the dark golden dragon snake whip. Merge a dragon tendon into this weapon? The dark-skinned middle-aged man understood what the little thieving cat meant. Meow meow. The little thieving cat entered the misty spatial world and took out some of the materials that Zhao Feng had obtained from the ancient dimension. Zhao Feng's eyes paused. The materials that the little thieving cat took out were all very valuable. The forging tower does have some dragon tendons. Here's the price. The dark-skinned man pointed out with his finger, and a screen of light appeared in the air. There were many types of dragon tendons on it, and the price was enough to make normal mystic light realm sacred lords go bankrupt. Meow meow. The little thieving cat looked at Zhao Feng and revealed a begging gaze. Zhao Feng obviously understood what the little thieving cat meant. The dragon tendon was the main material needed to strengthen the dark golden dragon snake whip. Its value far surpassed the materials that the little thieving cat had just taken out of the misty spatial world. Zhao Feng nodded his head helplessly. The little thieving cat then took out a large amount of resources and primal crystal stones from the misty spatial world to pay for the dragon tendon. Zhao Feng was slightly stunned. The total value of these resources was almost 10 times the amount that the little thieving cat had used to strengthen the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. However, the resources in Zhao Feng's hands were completely different from before. He would be generous this time. Several hours later, the dark-skinned middle-aged robot took out a dark golden dragon snake whip from a mysterious furnace. The red light on the surface of the dark golden dragon snake whip started to fade, and a layer of bright gold lines appeared on its surface. The entire dragon snake whip seemed to become more agile. Meow. The little thieving cat grabbed it, and a silver-gray light merged into it. The dark golden dragon snake whip instantly twisted in the air, and turned into a dark golden longbow. The little thieving cat aimed the dark golden longbow at Zhao Feng and lightly pulled the bowstring, as if it was showing off. Zhao Feng was slightly taken aback. It seemed like the enhanced dark gold dragon snake whip was much more flexible. Zhao Feng hesitated for a moment before leaving the forging tower. He currently did not have any weapons or equipment that he needed to enhance. Zhao Feng hadn't fully grasped the skylocking bow yet, but the Ice Imperial Spear had already reached its peak. As for the cost of customizing weapons and equipment, even the current Zhao Feng would have to cough up blood. I'll deal with what I need first. If there are any leftovers, perhaps I can consider upgrading the skylocking bow. Zhao Feng made up his mind. After all, he had no idea how long it would be before he could return to the Fecta Civilization City. Right now he had a lot of resources on hand. Many of the items weren't very useful to Zhao Feng, so it was naturally best to spend them all here. Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat then went to the Divine Techniques Palace. In the Divine Techniques Palace, there were secret manuals for sale. They provided all kinds of cultivation methods, and other solutions. Zhao Feng's 5 elemental wind lightning technique and Golden Kuan's sacred lightning body had been fused together in the Fecta City last time. Guests from afar, do you have any requests for custom-made techniques? A scholarly elder gave a kind smile as he looked at the little thieving cat in surprise. I need a soul-type eye fusion and possession technique. Zhao Feng told him why he was here. The Eye of Death was also a soul-type eye, and its abilities were extremely powerful. If he could use the Eye of Death well, Zhao Feng was obviously willing. Looks like this guest has obtained an eye related to one of the 8 great god eyes. The scholarly elder's eyes flashed. That's right. Zhao Feng was stunned. This elder should only be an automaton of the Divine Techniques Palace, but he was able to guess that Zhao Feng had obtained an eye related to one of the 8 great god eyes. Guest, there's no need to be surprised. The eye related to one of the 8 great god eyes are all soul-type inheritances, and I can feel a strong eye bloodline aura from your body. The scholarly elder in white light gave a kind smile. Guest, take a look and see which one you want. The scholarly elder pointed out with his finger, and a screen appeared in the air. Many techniques flashed and disappeared. Soon, only the soul-type eye-stealing techniques were left. The screen then quickly moved in front of Zhao Feng. So expensive. Zhao Feng was first stunned by the price of these secret techniques. There were a total of 8 eye-stealing techniques here, and the price of each one far surpassed the resources the little thieving cat needed to strengthen the dark golden dragon snake whip. Guessed these secret techniques are in low demand, so they aren't easy to sell. This is already the lowest price. The scholarly elder shook his head. Even in the continent zone, there were very few people who needed the soul eye possession art. The scholarly elder didn't lie to Zhao Feng. Putting aside the fact that eye bloodlines were already rare, most eye bloodlines were taken over in the physical dimension. The soul was too dangerous. Even if someone obtained an eye bloodline, they wouldn't dare to use it rashly. Zhao Feng carefully looked at the information on the screen. In order to ensure the success rate and feasibility of these secret techniques, Zhao Feng decided to ignore the price. I want the soul eye refining technique. Zhao Feng's gaze finally stopped at a certain place. Zhao Feng then looked at the price and took in a deep breath. Calculating it, this would cost almost 30% of Zhao Feng's resources. One had to know that all of Zhao Feng's resources were accumulated in the Divine Illusion Dimension and the Imperial Tombs. The most valuable part came from the Black Wind Canyon Forbidden Ground. Even the total resources of a normal Sacred King wouldn't be as much as Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng couldn't imagine the value of this soul eye refining technique if it cost 30% of his resources. However, If he could use the eye of death perfectly, it would be worth it. Customer, the soul eye refining technique you chose just happens to be the best technique out of all of them. The scholarly elder revealed a bright smile and praised Zhao Feng for his good taste. In the end, Zhao Feng paid for the soul eye refining technique. The scholarly elder took out a book of light from a bookshelf and gave it to Zhao Feng. As he was about to leave, Zhao Feng suddenly remembered the incomplete 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Zhao Feng obviously wouldn't waste any time since he could buy the complete 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Furthermore, the 10,000 divine thoughts technique should be a low-tier heaven-grade technique, so its price wouldn't be too high. Do you have the 10,000 divine thoughts technique here? Zhao Feng asked. Coincidentally, I have the 10,000 divine thoughts technique here. The elder smiled confidently. He took out a book of light from the bookshelf behind him and told Zhao Feng the price. This price is a bit too expensive. Zhao Feng said. The price of the complete 10,000 divine thoughts technique was far more than what the little thieving cat had spent on strengthening the dark golden dragon snake whip. Zhao Feng couldn't understand this. Little friend, since you know this technique, you obviously know its value. This is a mid-tier heaven-grade technique, so the price is very fair. The elder explained to Zhao Feng for a while and acted like he was offering the lowest price. Middle-tier heaven-grade? Zhao Feng paused for a moment. He didn't expect the complete 10,000 divine thoughts technique to be at the mid-tier heaven grade. Zhao Feng then remembered that Duan Muqing wasn't sure what rank the 10,000 divine thoughts technique was, and only said that it might be at the heaven grade. If it really was at that rank, then the price wasn't high. At the same time, Zhao Feng also remembered that the Heaven's Legacy City of the 18 Corners Pirate Emperor Sacred Land was in urgent need of primal crystal stones. Thus, the prices of all goods and services were discounted and relatively low. The Heaven's Legacy City in the Imperial Tombs didn't lack resources at all. Every 500 years, for princes and many experts would come here, and they would use up almost all the resources they had. This caused the prices of the items here to slowly rise. In other words, the prices in this Heaven's Legacy City were even higher than the Heaven's Legacy City in the 18 Corners Pirate Sacred Land. Okay, I'll take it. Zhao Feng gritted his teeth and said. Zhao Feng then took out a large amount of resources and bought the complete 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Also, little friend, I have the next part of the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Do you want to take a look? Seeing Zhao Feng being so generous, the elder smiled faintly and continued to promote the technique to Zhao Feng. It wasn't easy for an employer to come, and the first thing he wanted was a top-tier technique. He obviously wouldn't let Zhao Feng go so easily. What? The next part of the 10,000 divine thoughts technique? Zhao Feng was a bit surprised. He hadn't heard his master mention this before. However, the Duanmu family had probably obtained the 10,000 divine thoughts technique by accident, and the Duanmu family didn't even know if there was a next part. Yes, this is a soul cultivating technique created by the expert who wrote the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. The elder introduced it to Zhao Feng. A soul cultivating technique? Zhao Feng was a bit surprised and he fell into deep thought. It wouldn't take long for Zhao Feng to cultivate the 10,000 divine thoughts technique to the level of creating 10,000 thoughts with one thought. So he really had to consider other soul cultivating techniques. Moreover, the 10,000 divine thoughts technique was indeed the best soul cultivating technique he had seen so far. Since it was the next part of the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, its level should be higher, but Zhao Feng didn't dare to imagine its price. Moreover, Zhao Feng had always wanted to find other uses for the Thunder Soul Body, and soul cultivating techniques should be the most direct way. Zhao Feng couldn't help but be tempted. Can you tell me what's inside? Zhao Feng suddenly felt that even though he had so many resources in this place, it wasn't enough. This technique is called the Soul Splitting Technique, and it's a soul cultivating technique. There's also a soul cultivating technique, but I can't tell you anything else. The elder didn't reveal too much information. He looked at Zhao Feng and smiled mysteriously. At the same time, the scholarly elder told Zhao Feng the price of the soul-splitting technique. It seems very cheap. Zhao Feng was confused. Since the expert who wrote the 10,000 divine thoughts technique wrote a soul-cultivating technique, it wouldn't be too bad. However, the price seemed to be lower than the complete 10,000 divine thoughts technique. At this moment, the little thieving cat threw the ancient coin in its hand. Meow meow. The little thieving cat was very supportive of Zhao Feng buying the soul-splitting technique. Okay, I'll buy the soul-splitting technique too. Chapter 976. Zhao Feng gritted his teeth and took out a large amount of resources to exchange for the soul-splitting technique. Then the elegant old man handed an ancient book of light to Zhao Feng. Buzz. The contents of the book of light quickly entered Zhao Feng's mind. Zhao Feng's expression darkened as he glanced at it. I was tricked by this old man. The soul-splitting technique and the 10,000 divine thoughts technique were indeed created by the same person. It turned out that the soul-splitting technique was also an incomplete soul cultivation technique, and it did contain some soul secret techniques. However, what made Zhao Feng speechless was that the soul-splitting technique only had the first level. Although it was an incomplete soul cultivation technique, it was still too incomplete, wasn't it? Zhao Feng was tricked, but the old man didn't lie to Zhao Feng when he sold the technique. It could only be said that Zhao Feng had underestimated this mechanical puppet. At this moment, all the contents of the soul-splitting technique were imprinted in Zhao Feng's mind, so it was impossible for him to get a refund. Zhao Feng finally understood why the soul-splitting technique was cheaper than the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Zhao Feng was slightly angry, and he looked at the elegant old man in front of him. As expected, all the businesses in the world were black-hearted, and even mechanical puppets were no exception. Seeing Zhao Feng's expression, the elegant old man smiled apologetically and said, Sir, although the soul-splitting technique is incomplete, it will be at least a top-tier heaven-grade technique if it's completed. Therefore, although the soul-splitting technique only has one level, it's indeed the cheapest price. Zhao Feng didn't fully believe the old man's words. The soul-splitting technique only had the first level, and even with Zhao Feng's God-Eyes calculation abilities, it was very hard for him to complete it. However, Zhao Feng's eyes spun, and he said, Can the Divine Technique's palace complete the soul-splitting technique? If the soul-splitting technique was really at the peak of the heaven grade like the elegant old man said, and the price was reasonable, Zhao Feng was willing to buy it. After all, he had already bought the first level of the soul-splitting technique. The contents of the soul-splitting technique are unique and lack examples, but the Divine Technique's palace can complete it. However, the practicality and safety can't be guaranteed, and the price might be much higher than the soul-eye refining technique. The elegant old man thought for a while and said with a smile. By the time the elder finished speaking, Zhao Feng had already left with the little thieving cat. Since the soul-splitting technique wasn't safe enough, and the price was even higher than the soul-eye refining technique, Zhao Feng couldn't accept it. However, Zhao Feng couldn't accept a soul technique that didn't even guarantee its safety, and cost more than the soul-eye refining technique. One had to know that the soul-eye refining technique had cost almost 30% of Zhao Feng's resources. If he used another 30% to buy a soul cultivation technique that he didn't even know could be cultivated, Zhao Feng would be crazy. After leaving the Divine Technique's palace, Zhao Feng even glanced at the little thieving cat. Meow meow. The little thieving cat revealed an innocent expression, indicating that it didn't know anything. It was just divining the good side, so it supported Zhao Feng in buying the soul-splitting technique. After leaving the Divine Technique's palace, Zhao Feng went straight to the 10,000 Blood Palace. The 10,000 Blood Palace was even better than the Divine Technique's palace. No one could resist the temptation of the 10,000 Blood Palace's bloodline. May I ask if you want to implant or strengthen your bloodline? An elegant female made of blood-colored light smiled as she looked at Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat. I want to strengthen my bloodline to the level of the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng had been here once before, so he was familiar with the functions here. Okay. To strengthen your bloodline, you first need to check your bloodline. The elegant female smiled and said. Zhao Feng then sat in front of a weird multi-armed machine. A sharp needle extended out of the machine and stabbed into Zhao Feng's body. Found eye bloodline. Unknown. Unable to strengthen. A sound came from the multi-armed machine. Found the ancient ice water bloodline. Fire bloodline, blood bloodline, and ancient race bloodline. The ancient ice water bloodline is the weakest, so choose the fire or blood bloodline to strengthen. Can be strengthened to the lightning flame ancient dragon race, god flame race, ancient blood race, and other 10,000 ancient races bloodlines. Due to your strong bloodline foundation and the fact that you have the ancient race bloodline, the cost is only half of the original price. The elegant woman in the scarlet light revealed a strange expression as she finished the report. Half. Zhao Feng was surprised. He remembered that in the Heaven's Legacy City of the 18 Corners Pirate Sacred Land, Zhao Feng's cost to strengthen the Mystic Ice-Scaled Race's 10,000 Ancient Races bloodline was 1/10 of the original price. This meant that Zhao Feng had to pay at least 5 times the original price to strengthen his bloodline here. Zhao Feng then thought about it. Almost all of the bloodlines that the elegant female mentioned were within the top 100, and they were all far stronger than the Mystic Ice-Scaled Race bloodline. The Lightning Flame Ancient Dragon Race and God Flame Race were even in the top 50. Zhao Feng thought for a while and understood. His Perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline was one of the top bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races. This was why the 10,000 ancient races bloodlines that could be strengthened were ranked so high. However, the cost of such a high-ranking bloodline wasn't just a little bit higher. How much does it cost to strengthen to the Lightning Flame Ancient Dragon Race bloodline? Zhao Feng hesitated for a while and asked. Before entering the Heaven's Legacy City, Zhao Feng felt that there was an ocean of resources, and that he couldn't use them all. But after entering, he had to be very careful. The elegant female pointed in the air, and a screen of light appeared. There was detailed information about the Lightning Flame Ancient Dragon bloodline, and it also stated how far Zhao Feng had awakened to this bloodline. Finally, there was the price. In reality, with your foundation and unique fire elemental bloodline, you can even strengthen to the 9th-ranked Ancient Golden Crow Race bloodline. However, the 10,000 Blood Palace doesn't have such a bloodline. If you have such a bloodline, we can strengthen it for you for free. The elegant female looked at the little thieving cat and continued. Golden Crow Race. Zhao Feng's heart shook. His Perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline could absorb the power of the ancient Golden Crow, but he didn't expect it to strengthen to the Golden Crow bloodline. However, how could Zhao Feng have the bloodline of the ancient Golden Crow? There seemed to be only one Golden Crow race left in the fan universe, and that was the Immemorial Glory Sunday. That was a terrifying race that even Heavenly Divine Realm experts didn't dare to get close to. This elegant female was joking with him, right? The Lightning Flame Ancient Dragon bloodline was the most suitable bloodline for Zhao Feng right now, but it was ranked 43rd among the 10,000 ancient races, and the cost of strengthening it was based on substandard god crystals. Zhao Feng calculated, and it seemed like it wouldn't be enough even if he spent all the resources in the misty spatial world. In the end, Zhao Feng didn't strengthen it. Firstly, Zhao Feng's 5 elemental wind lightning technique and Golden Koan's sacred lightning body required an ocean's worth of resources. Secondly, Zhao Feng needed to manage his own force, and the resources he needed far surpassed what he needed to cultivate. Thirdly, Zhao Feng now had a large beast horde. Although he didn't think about all of them, he definitely had to raise the 5 poison distinct bees, sky-shaking golden apes, and some other rare beasts. Therefore, Zhao Feng couldn't spend all his resources just for himself. Do you have any 10,000 ancient races bloodlines that are suitable for the sky-shaking golden apes? Zhao Feng asked. Zhao Feng wasn't going to strengthen his own bloodline, but he could strengthen his spiritual pets. Among them, the sky-shaking golden apes had huge potential. The female then started to inspect the sky-shaking golden apes bloodline. There are 2 ways to strengthen the sky-shaking golden apes. One is for speed, and the other is for power. Their bloodlines can be strengthened too. The elegant blood-colored woman gave Zhao Feng a simple introduction. A screen of light then appeared in front of Zhao Feng. I'll strengthen it to the Tyrannical Force King Kong race bloodline. Zhao Feng looked through it, and chose to strengthen the sky-shaking golden ape's strength-type bloodline. The Tyrannical Force King Kong race bloodline could double the sky-shaking golden ape's strength, and increase their defense and body. It was ranked in the 400s of the 10,000 ancient races, and the price wasn't high. Furthermore, the sky-shaking golden apes were beasts left behind by the ancient era, so they had a certain amount of ancient era bloodlines within them. I'll need 7 days for 7 sky-shaking golden apes, the female said. Zhao Feng nodded. He left the sky-shaking golden apes in the 10,000 blood palace and prepared to leave. Zhao Feng. Shi Yulei was surprised when he stepped into the 10,000 blood palace. He didn't expect Zhao Feng to be so fast. The first thing he did after entering the Heaven's Legacy City was to find a place to strengthen and implant bloodlines. Zhao Feng, you don't need to come to the 10,000 blood palace with your perfect blood devil sun bloodline, right? Shi Yulei laughed. Zhao Feng's perfect blood devil sun bloodline was ranked in the top 10 of the Imperial Dao bloodlines. If he wanted to strengthen it to a higher level, the price would be unimaginable. Yes, I strengthened the bloodline of my spirit pet. Zhao Feng shook his head slightly. He actually wanted to strengthen the Thunderfire Ancient Dragon bloodline. What? You strengthened the bloodline of your spirit pet? Shi Yulei's mouth fell open. Shi Yulei had come prepared and borrowed a lot of resources from his family. Even so, the resources weren't enough for him to strengthen his bloodline once. On the other hand, Zhao Feng was strengthening the bloodline of his spirit pet. However, it was possible that he had only strengthened some ordinary bloodlines. Thinking up to there, Shi Yulei felt better. I'm going to look around somewhere else. Zhao Feng said goodbye to Shi Yulei. After leaving the 10,000 blood palace, Zhao Feng took out a map of the Heaven's Legacy City. Let's go to the Divine Herb Tower next. Most of the pills and herbs that Zhao Feng had obtained in the Imperial Tombs weren't what he needed. Furthermore, the little thieving cat also wanted to go to the Divine Herb Tower. The Divine Herb Tower was extremely large, and it wasn't any smaller than the 10,000 blood palace. There was an abundance of medicinal herbs, and they were all stored in different environments, so they were well preserved. Apart from pills, there were also some liquids stored in half-transparent test tubes. Guest, do you want to buy herbs, medicines, or special medicines? An elegant female glowing with green light slowly walked over. I can even customize medicines? Zhao Feng was slightly surprised, but unfortunately he didn't need anything like that. At the end, Zhao Feng traded the large amount of resources he had for wind, lightning, and fire elemental resources that he needed. With Zhao Feng's left eye and the Blood Devil Sun bloodline, it was extremely easy for him to refine herbs. Therefore, there was no need to buy more expensive medicines and pills. These resources should be enough for me to cultivate to the mystic light realm. Zhao Feng gave a faint smile. The little thieving cat was also here, and it traded for many resources it needed. The Divine Herb Tower was indeed a good place. Exchanging resources for resources didn't cost anything. This means that I still have a lot of resources left. I can consider strengthening the sky-locking bow. Chapter 977. After leaving the Divine Herb Tower, Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat headed toward the forging building. Before long, Zhao Feng found that Zhou Su had also entered the Divine Herb Tower. Zhao Feng also saw Old Ying's figure in a nearby bookstore. At this moment, everyone was searching for their own fortune. What can I do for you? The dark-skinned male looked at Zhao Feng. Look at this weapon of mine. A dark silver bow appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. There were mysterious carvings on the surface of the bow, and it gave off a silver glow that formed tadpole-like carvings. This weapon isn't damaged at all, and it has reached the peak in every aspect. It can give many special effects, but since you specialize in the soul, there aren't many special effects that can be given to it. Furthermore, normal soul-type abilities aren't very useful to you. The dark-skinned male started to inspect the sky-locking bow. Zhao Feng was slightly surprised, and he admired this automaton. While the dark-skinned male was analyzing the sky-locking bow, he was also analyzing what the user specialized in. Zhao Feng's cultivation technique had many elements. Even if he strengthened the sky-locking bow with wind, lightning, fire, and other special effects, the overall effect of the sky-locking bow wouldn't be much. Therefore, Zhao Feng did want to strengthen the sky-locking bow with some soul-type abilities. I suggest that you give this weapon a soul-tracking ability. It should be very suitable for you. The dark-skinned male inspected Zhao Feng's left eye and said, Soul tracking. Zhao Feng paused. He couldn't think of what kind of ability it was just from looking at the words. Simply put, after strengthening this ability, you can use this bow to kill enemies that you can sense with your soul. The dark-skinned blacksmith revealed a confident smile. Directly kill people that I can sense with my soul? There's such an ability? Zhao Feng was slightly surprised. The sky-locking bow had the ability to lock onto the soul. Even if the target was very far away and merged into space, it could still pierce through them. However, the prerequisite was that Zhao Feng had to first lock onto the target with the sky-locking bow. As for the soul detection that the dark-skinned blacksmith was talking about, as long as Zhao Feng left a mark on someone with his eye bloodline, he would be able to sense it. If Zhao Feng could sense this person's location, he would be able to shoot the target with the sky-locking bow. For example, if Sacred Lord Black Demon had the mark left behind by Zhao Feng's God Eye, he would be able to hit Sacred Lord Black Demon if he pulled the sky-locking bow. Furthermore, this method of locking onto the target was even simpler, and it could even be done without anyone noticing. That's right. This bow's lock-on ability is very special, so it can be upgraded to soul tracking. The dark-skinned blacksmith nodded and explained again. It was important to emphasize that not all weapons could be equipped with this ability. The Sky Lock Bow had its own powerful lock-on ability. Soul tracking was just an upgrade of the Sky Lock Bow's ability to lock onto targets. Of course, this kind of ability enhancement required a very high reward. Alright, I choose to strengthen it. Zhao Feng decisively paid some remuneration and materials. Zhao Feng was very interested in the ability that the dark-skinned man mentioned. Guest, you can come in 2 days to get it. The dark-skinned man placed the sky-locking bow into a large black furnace and said, I also want to craft a few arrows that are suitable for this bow. Zhao Feng thought for a moment before continuing. He didn't need the fortune in the Heaven's Legacy City anymore. If he could craft a few arrows, they would be extremely powerful. With the sky-locking bow's ability, they would become one of Zhao Feng's trump cards. Although Zhao Feng still had the god-slaying arrow, even if Zhao Feng broke through to the mystic light realm, he might not be able to unleash the full power of the god-slaying arrow. Last time, when he killed the 9 Darkness Demonic Lord, Zhao Feng wasn't able to unleash the full power of the god-slaying arrow. The terrifying amount of energy it expended almost made Zhao Feng lose the ability to move. Most importantly, Zhao Feng only had 1 god-slaying arrow left. Guest, what kind of arrow do you need? You can make a simple request, and I can customize it perfectly. If you have the blueprints of a divine weapon or the arrow you want to craft, the price can be slightly cheaper. The dark-skinned man said passionately. Crafting or duplicating divine weapons based on the blueprints obviously saved a lot of time and effort, so the price was slightly lower. Zhao Feng's expression became grim. He obviously didn't have any blueprints but arrows. Look at this. A scarlet golden arrow suddenly appeared in Zhao Feng's palm. The moment the god-slaying arrow appeared, an invisible golden divine radiance penetrated the entire space. The metal weapons in the building of smithing rumbled and trembled. However, this powerful metallic light only appeared within the forging building, and the outside world didn't sense it at all. Zhao Feng couldn't help but be stunned. It looked like this forging building wasn't simple. It could even block the power of a substandard god weapon. This is a god-slaying arrow. The dark-skinned blacksmith's eyes glowed red. He obviously knew about these famous substandard god weapons. I don't need to craft a god-slaying arrow. I just need to use it as a template to craft a few arrows with slightly lower power. Zhao Feng believed that the forging building in the Tianji city had the ability to craft substandard god weapons. However, Zhao Feng couldn't afford it. One had to know that substandard god weapons were weapons that only demigods could control, and their value was immeasurable. Furthermore, the time that Zhao Feng could stay in the Tianji city was limited, and forging a substandard god weapon would take a lot of time. Alright, please hand the god-slaying arrow to me. We need to analyze the structure and crafting method of this weapon. It might take some time. The dark-skinned blacksmith looked at Zhao Feng with a hint of solemnity. Alright. Zhao Feng didn't hesitate. If this was a forging ground in the outside world, Zhao Feng definitely wouldn't agree. He wouldn't even take out the god-slaying arrow. The dark-skinned blacksmith took the god-slaying arrow and led Zhao Feng to the 10th floor, where he placed the god-slaying arrow into an extremely complicated device. For hours later, the dark-skinned blacksmith took out the god-slaying arrow and returned it to Zhao Feng. He pointed in the air, and a screen instantly appeared. "Customer, please take a look." According to the structure and crafting method of the god-slaying arrow, there are a few types of arrows that can be made. Zhao Feng's gaze immediately scanned the screen. There were many arrows on it, ranging from normal emperor-level arrows to god-slaying arrows. There were a total of 26 types. As expected, even the god-slaying arrow can be made. Zhao Feng took a deep breath and continued to browse. These 26 types of arrows were all one-time use items. Adding on the flowchart of the god-slaying arrow that Zhao Feng provided, the price was relatively low. In the end, Zhao Feng chose 3 arrows. The amount of primal crystal stones and ores he paid far exceeded the inheritance of a late-stage mystic light realm. "All right, customer, you can take back the bow and arrows in 2 days." The dark-skinned blacksmith revealed a happy smile. After leaving the smithy, Zhao Feng returned to the metal city walls. There were more than a dozen metal buildings here, but no one had returned yet. Zhao Feng chose a metal building on the side and activated its defensive restrictions. The little thieving cat immediately entered the misty spatial world. It had obtained a lot in the Heaven's Legacy City. Let's take a look at the soul-splitting technique first. Zhao Feng still hoped to use this incomplete soul technique. Furthermore, the scholarly elder from the Divine Techniques Palace had a good evaluation of this technique. From what the scholarly elder said, the soul-splitting technique seemed to be different from normal soul techniques. Zhao Feng spent some time to read through the soul-splitting technique. This technique is interesting. Zhao Feng's attention was attracted by the introduction. The 10,000 divine thoughts technique split one's thoughts into 2. However, the soul-splitting technique was an attempt to split the soul. Zhao Feng had never seen such a thought in the demigod Forgotten Garden, or the ancient god's mysterious palace. In terms of thinking, it was indeed a bright idea. However, there was only the first level of the soul-splitting technique, and only a small portion of the second level was written. There was also a note at the end. Those whose souls aren't strong enough through other people's experiments will find it difficult to cultivate the first level. Zhao Feng was speechless. The meaning behind these words was that no one had ever succeeded. Zhao Feng even thought that something had happened when the writer tried to cultivate the soul-splitting technique. Looks like I can only put the soul-splitting technique aside for now. Maybe I'll be able to complete this technique when I'm strong enough in the future. Zhao Feng had high hopes for this technique. After putting down the soul-splitting technique, Zhao Feng sank his consciousness into the soul-eye refining technique. The soul-eye refining technique was the technique with the highest success rate among the eye-stealing techniques. While understanding the soul-eye refining technique, Zhao Feng also circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and split off a wisp of his intent to use the power of God Tribulation Lightning to eliminate the intent of death in the eye of death. Half a day passed. It seems pretty simple. I can do it right now. Zhao Feng completely understood the soul-eye refining technique. This secret technique used the soul of the possessor to slowly refine the eye of death and change the essence of the eye. The closer the possessor was to the eye of death, the easier it would be to refine it. When the essence of the eye of death was 50% compatible with the possessor's soul, the possessor would be able to take over the eye of death. The Emperor of Death was a quasi-sacred lord, and the cultivation of this eye of death was the same as Zhao Feng's. I can start refining it now. Zhao Feng's consciousness entered the dimension of his left eye. The eye of death floated above the mysterious golden ball. The intent of death within had been completely expelled by Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng used the secret technique of the soul-eye refining technique to turn the soul intent into a unique soul flame and slowly refined it. A day passed by quickly. Almost all the members of the 9th Prince's team used up all their savings on the first day. Everyone was slightly regretful that they didn't break through more inheritances. Shinjizi, on the other hand, purchased an extremely profound formation from the Formation Talisman Tower and set it up outside the city walls. On the second day, Zhao Feng, who was within the metallic room, opened his eyes. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Zhao Feng was slightly surprised. In just 2 days, he found that the soul of the Eye of Death was 50% compatible with him. This meant that Zhao Feng could start the next step. Chapter 978. In just 2 days, the soul of the Eye of Death was already 50% compatible with Zhao Feng's soul. This speed of refinement far surpassed Zhao Feng's imagination. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure disappeared from the metal room and appeared in the misty spatial world. A spatial whirlpool appeared in front of Zhao Feng, and a pitch-black Eye of Death in the form of a soul appeared. Unfortunately, I don't specialize in the laws of death. Zhao Feng sighed. The Eye of Death was, without a doubt, a god-eye inheritance with extremely strong offensive capabilities. It was a fatal counter to living beings and souls. The same soul eye bloodline technique would be extremely powerful when used with the Eye of Death. However, the prerequisite was that the user's understanding of the laws of death had reached a certain level. Zhao Feng had fused with the god tribulation lightning symbols, so he had some understanding of the laws of destruction. Logically speaking, the Eye of Destruction, or the God Eye, was more suitable for Zhao Feng. However, Zhao Feng wasn't satisfied if he didn't use this Eye of Death. I should fuse it into my right eye. Zhao Feng thought about it. His left eye had the god's spiritual eye, and he didn't know what would happen if he fused with it. Zhao Feng would rather destroy the Eye of Death than let anything happen to the god's eye. After all, the god's spiritual eye had changed Zhao Feng's destiny and accompanied him as he grew. Then let's begin. Zhao Feng's expression changed. A powerful soul intent covered the Eye of Death and merged it into Zhao Feng's body, then moved it to where Zhao Feng's right eye was. Refine. A surge of powerful soul power surged out of Zhao Feng's soul, and it turned into a gray-purple flame according to the soul eye refining technique. This time, he refined the Eye of Death and Zhao Feng's soul at the same time so that they would be similar. His goal was to fuse the Eye of Death into Zhao Feng's soul. Once he succeeded, he just needed to use the secret technique in the soul eye refining technique to harmonize the Eye of Death and Zhao Feng's soul. It wouldn't take long before the Eye of Death and Zhao Feng's soul completely merged. At that time, the Eye of Death would belong to Zhao Feng. Buzz. The Eye of Death was right next to Zhao Feng's right eye. A ball of grayish-purple soul flame burned in Zhao Feng's right eye. The burning of his soul made him feel as if he had fallen into a sea of hellfire. The piercing burning pain spread from his eyes to his entire body. Zhao Feng's entire body trembled. He was drenched in sweat, but he gritted his teeth and endured. Gradually, the right eye in Zhao Feng's soul began to cave in. At the same time, one could see that the color of the soul around the Eye of Death started to change slightly, and wisps of dark purple light started to appear. According to the soul eye refining technique, this sign would take at least 3 days to appear. However, Zhao Feng had only refined it for 4 hours, and the Eye of Death had already started to change. It seems very easy. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. It looked like he was fated with powerful eye bloodlines. This way, Zhao Feng would be able to reduce the pain of the burning of his soul. Zhao Feng sunk into the world of his soul and endured the pain. At the same time, he was looking forward to receiving some sort of reward. At this moment, the color of the soul around the Eye of Death was extremely similar to Zhao Feng's soul. Okay. Zhao Feng started to circulate his technique and guided his soul to slowly merge with the Eye of Death. However, Zhao Feng's left eye suddenly started to twitch. As if it had been stimulated, some of the dormant aura in the god's eye was awakened. Boom. The god's spiritual eye released a domineering ancient origin aura that looked down on the universe and the desolate world. This peerless aura circulated through Zhao Feng's soul. When this aura touched the Eye of Death, which was in the process of merging with it, Zhao Feng's entire soul started to tremble, and it released a desolate and ancient aura. This ancient aura filled Zhao Feng's soul and repelled all other auras. What's going on? The god's spiritual eye is repelling the Eye of Death? Zhao Feng's heart jumped, and sweat poured down his forehead. The god's spiritual eye had changed at this critical moment. The god's spiritual eye's actions gave Zhao Feng the feeling that it was forcefully taking over his territory. The god's spiritual eye was actually repelling foreign souls. The Eye of Death that was in the process of merging with the god's spiritual eye started to tremble when it felt this desolate and ancient aura. It even instinctively tried to break free from Zhao Feng's soul. No, maybe the god spiritual eye thinks that the eye of death is too weak. Zhao Feng carefully felt it. When the eye of death sensed the existence of Zhao Feng's left eye, it started to tremble and wanted to break free from Zhao Feng's soul. It was as if it didn't dare to exist in the same soul as the god's spiritual eye. On the other hand, the eye of death's actions proved that Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye did indeed have the potential to become the ninth god's eye. Otherwise, why would the descendant of one of the 8 great god eyes submit to the god's spiritual eye? It should be fighting against it. Not good, something's wrong with the eye of death. Zhao Feng was thinking. He didn't notice that the soul of the eye of death started to become chaotic, and an uneasy soul aura started to radiate from it. Absorb. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto the eye of death and put it into the dimension of his left eye. After entering the dimension of his left eye, the eye of death was instantly suppressed. At the same time, the god's spiritual eye started to calm down, and the desolate aura started to disappear from Zhao Feng's soul. So close. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. In the end, 2 days of effort had been wasted, and the eye of death had almost been destroyed. One had to know that once the eye of death was destroyed, it would return to the Emperor of Death. I didn't think that something like this would happen. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. He didn't expect this to happen. This made Zhao Feng feel that what he spent in the Divine Techniques Palace was a waste. He only had the first level of the soul-splitting technique, so he wasn't even sure if he could cultivate it. On the other hand, the eye of death was rejected by the god's spiritual eye, so it couldn't merge into Zhao Feng's soul. This meant that the soul eye refining technique's value wasn't displayed. I can only put it aside for now. Zhao Feng couldn't think of a solution right now. On top of that, Zhao Feng didn't specialize in the laws of death, so the eye of death wasn't very useful to Zhao Feng. Therefore, Zhao Feng wasn't very frustrated. It was already the second day. Zhao Feng left the room of steel and walked toward the forging building. Guest, here's your stuff. The dark-skinned brawny man handed the sky-locking bow and 3 arrows to Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng took the sky-locking bow and felt that there was something different about it. Zhao Feng's soul intent could merge into the sky-locking bow more easily. To a certain degree, Zhao Feng could use more of the sky-locking bow's power. As for the other 3 arrows, 1 was bright gold and 2 were dark gold. They each gave off a sharp aura, and the structure on them was similar to the god-slaying arrow. Guess we'll need to spend some time to refine this bow with your soul power. Only then will you be able to better use the soul tracking ability. The dark-skinned blacksmith said with a smile. After leaving the forging shop, Zhao Feng returned to the room of steel and started cultivating. Luckily, the sky-locking bow and the forging of the arrows were very successful. Zhao Feng felt slightly better. Afterward, Zhao Feng circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and used his soul power to refine the sky-locking bow. At the same time, he prepared to break through to the Emperor realm. Zhao Feng's soul power was too much higher than his cultivation, so his progress was very slow. On the other hand, Zhao Feng's foundation was very solid. He took out some herbs with the elements of wind, lightning, and fire and started to absorb the essence of heaven and earth. One day later, a huge whirlpool of wind lightning formed above the room that Zhao Feng was in. One boom boom, the aura from the whirlpool became more and more violent. The water of wind lightning, wood of wind lightning, and fire of wind lightning started to change endlessly. Dense heaven-earth yuan qi and some ancient auras were sucked into the whirlpool. Zhao Feng held a rare treasure in his hand. Countless pure elemental powers of wind, lightning, and fire were guided by Zhao Feng into the boiling dimension of his true yuan. Zhao Feng is breaking through? Shi Yulei, who was in the room next door, was shocked by Zhao Feng's aura. The members of the 9th Prince's team came out from the other rooms and sighed in their hearts. Such a profound wind-lightning technique, and it seems to contain other elements as well. Jing Kai felt pressured. The quality and quantity of Zhao Feng's true yuan far surpasses normal emperors. It should be extremely easy for him to break through. Olding could feel how deep Zhao Feng's foundation was. Not good. This is the last day of the second segment. Attack the city and plunder the land. Olding suddenly realized something. Someone's coming. Su Qingling's eyes flashed, and she immediately said, Go to the city walls. Olding had an ugly expression as he roared. Zhao Feng's breakthrough didn't come at the right time. The 7th prince's team and the teams of the other 3 princes all knew that Zhao Feng was the strongest pillar of the 9th prince's team. And he was a beast tamer. They could obviously feel the power of Zhao Feng's breakthrough. How could they let go of such a good chance? Although Zhao Feng's beast horde was still guarding the city walls, the battle power of the beast horde was reduced by almost 40%. Without a beast tamer to control them, the battle power of the beast horde would decrease by almost 40%. Furthermore, Zhao Feng's strongest spiritual pet, the sky-shaking golden ape, was still strengthening its bloodline in the 10,000 Blood Palace and couldn't participate in the battle. What should we do with Zhao Feng? A complicated look flashed through Su Qingling's eyes. Ignore him for now. Shinjizi, focus on controlling the array. Olding had a decisive expression as he looked outside the city walls. The beast horde that covered the sky was slowly approaching. There were almost 30 peerless experts behind the beast horde. Go. Master Zhang, control your beast horde. The 5th prince said in a hurry. Zhao Feng's breaking through right now, and it won't end in a short amount of time. We'll first finish off the other members and take over this Heaven's Legacy city, and we'll win. The 12th prince was overjoyed. This is the last day of the 2nd stage. Hurry up. The 2nd prince roared as light shot out of his eyes. The attackers were the teams of the 3 princes. The last day of a siege was usually the most intense day of the war. As long as the princes entered the metal houses and stamped their pseudo-crown prince seal, the Heaven's Legacy city would automatically close for a day. On the 2nd day, the 2nd stage would end, and they would win. They wouldn't have to worry about other attackers. Chapter 979. Defend with all your might. Olding immediately gave out orders with an urgent look. The other members stood within Shinjizi's defensive array and started to defend. Luckily, the beast horde outside the city still listened to Zhao Feng's orders before he left and guarded this place. When the beasts from the 3 princes' team attacked, they obviously fought back. However, without a beast tamer to control them, their battle power dropped dramatically. Without a beast tamer to control them, these beasts charged out of the array. Olding, we can't control these beasts. Sure, Yulei felt helpless when he saw this. Luckily, these beasts knew to stay within the defensive array after suffering a few times. We'll defend for as long as we can. Old Ying's eyes were grim, and his tone was decisive. From the looks of it, Zhao Feng really is breaking through. The 2nd prince rubbed his chin not far away from the city wall. The signs of breaking through could be faked. This was also a trick to lure the enemy out. You guys go as well. After confirming that Zhao Feng was really breaking through in seclusion, the 2nd prince immediately gave out the order. Everyone attack. The 12th prince had an excited expression. Whoosh! Whoosh! Close to 30 experts from the 3 princes' team flew into the air and attacked the 9th prince's metal city wall. Brother 2nd, don't forget about the blood contract we signed. The 5th prince had a grim expression. Only one prince could stay in the Heaven's Legacy city. There was only one day left in the 2nd stage, and it was impossible for the 3 princes to take turns entering the Heaven's Legacy city. Therefore, the 3 princes signed a blood contract. The blood contract was created by the Heaven's Legacy race, and there were very few of them in the world. Normally, this scroll would only be used under special circumstances. The content of the contract was that the 2nd prince had to help the other princes and their members complete the transactions they wanted in the Heaven's Legacy city, and he wasn't allowed to take any resources for himself. Of course. The 2nd prince had a calm expression. This was their last chance. All they had to do was enter the Heaven's Legacy city. Also guard against Brother 7th. Once his group attacks, use your draconic providence to stall them. The 2nd prince's expression remained unchanged as he transmitted his voice to the other 2 princes. 100 miles away from Tianji City, the 7th prince's team gathered in a small forest. We don't have the ability to attack the city by ourselves. We can only wait for the 3 princes and the 9th prince to be severely injured before we make our move. The scholar slowly analyzed. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's soul and sacred body had both been heavily injured by Zhao Feng. The injuries on the divine body could be easily healed, but the injuries caused by the power of the thunder tribulation couldn't be healed. Grandmaster Zhang Yi's demonic beasts also suffered heavy losses. If Xiaofeng doesn't come out of seclusion, the three princes should be able to easily breach the city walls. What should we do then? Jiang Hao voiced his doubts. Although the members of the joint team of the three princes were weaker, there were too many of them. If the seventh prince were to compete with the three princes would have a higher chance of winning. The other members of the group also looked at the scholar. They had the same doubts. If it were you guys, would you choose to break through at this time? The scholar said with a deep gaze. Everyone fell silent. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they wouldn't go into seclusion to break through at this time. It shouldn't take long for Xiaofeng to make a breakthrough. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge said. With Xiaofeng's powerful strength, one could see his foundation. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge even suspected that Xiaofeng was purposely suppressing his cultivation. In this situation, it wouldn't take long if he was experienced. Then we still have hope. Lu Tianqi immediately said. Only when the ninth prince and the three princes fought at full power would they be able to injure each other. On the other side, the ninth prince had taken over a Heaven's Legacy city. The pressure on the eighth prince immediately decreased. He's finally breaking through to the martial monarch realm. As Yu Tianhao thought of this, the bloodline in his body trembled slightly. Although he knew that Xiaofeng's strength was unfathomable at the challenger realm. However, Yu Tianhao hoped to compete with Xiaofeng in the same realm. I think that Xiaofeng purposely chose this time to break through. He probably wants to see what he obtained in the Heaven's Legacy city. Sacred Lord Hundred Refined gave a faint smile. He didn't believe that Xiaofeng would be so stupid as to choose this time to break through. Within the metallic building under the whirlpool of wind lightning. Although Xiaofeng was in the middle of his breakthrough, he still split off a part of his mind to observe the battle outside the city walls. The rest of his mind was still refining the sky-locking bow. The refinement is complete. Xiaofeng's heart moved slightly. At this moment, the sky-locking bow and Xiaofeng's soul intent formed a secret connection. At the same time, the whirlpool of wind lightning above Xiaofeng's building quickly disappeared. Xiaofeng's foundation was extremely strong, and with the addition of all kinds of rare herbs, it was extremely easy for him to break through to the martial monarch realm. The three-colored wind lightning True Yuan in Xiaofeng's True Yuan dimension became even purer. The three-colored True Yuan quickly transformed in the True Yuan dimension and formed a whirlpool. It didn't take long for Xiaofeng to stabilize his aura. After breaking through to the martial monarch realm, Xiaofeng's strength didn't increase significantly. However, the quality and quantity of his True Yuan had increased. The quality of Xiaofeng's True Yuan was originally comparable to a quasi-sacred lord. Now that the True Yuan formed in Xiaofeng's True Yuan dimension surpassed quasi-sacred lords, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it the strongest True Yuan. This was because True Yuan above the sacred lord level would turn into mystic light sacred power. Meow meow. At this moment, the little thieving cat appeared in front of Xiaofeng and handed the misty spatial world to Xiaofeng. Whoosh! After putting on the misty spatial world, Xiaofeng turned into a streak of light and charged out. On the metallic city walls, countless beasts, almost 30 peerless emperors and quasi-sacred lords charged over. The defensive array that Shinjizi controlled couldn't take it anymore and shattered with a crack. Amongst the ninth prince's subordinates, Su Qingling was already injured and was being healed by Zhou Su'er. Shi Yulei held the giant dark yellow shield and blocked in front of him, but it wasn't very useful. There were too many people on the other side, and they were all attacking together. A large number of Xiaofeng's beasts were also injured or killed by the three beast tamers. The ninth prince raised the dim pseudo-crown prince seal, and was about to release his draconic providence. I'm late. Xiaofeng's voice sounded in everyone's souls. The ninth prince instantly put away the pseudo-crown prince seal, and everyone let out a breath. They had been waiting for Xiaofeng to come out of seclusion. Xiaofeng, quick, control the beast horde. Olding had a joyful expression as he quickly said. Xiaofeng breaking through to the martial monarch realm so quickly surpassed his expectations, but he didn't care that much right now. However, he couldn't care so much right now. As long as Xiaofeng regained control of the beast horde, With his powerful strength, it was still possible to defend the Heaven's Legacy City. Zhao Feng, it's useless even if you break through now. We're all here. Shui Yuan roared with laughter. Almost all the members of the three princes had reached the city walls, and the ninth prince's team had expended a lot of energy. Some of them were even injured. Could Zhao Feng fight against almost 30 emperors and quasi-sacred lords by himself? Then I'll let you down. Zhao Feng harumphed coldly with a cold expression. Zhao Feng waved his left hand, and the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly appeared. The terrifying 10,000 ancient races bloodline made the hearts of all the emperors shake. Their bloodlines were suppressed, and they found it hard to breathe. Before anyone could react, the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly opened its mouth and spat out 5-colored silk that instantly covered everything within a few hundred yards. Funny, how can the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly's silk trap so many of us? An emperor couldn't help but laugh at Zhao Feng's stupid actions. Almost 30 members charged toward Zhao Feng and the other members of the ninth prince's team, but the cloud silkworm Saint Silk's ability to capture people was too scattered. It couldn't even trap one person. Some of the experts that were caught by the cloud silkworm Saint Silk released their true yuan and pushed it away. However, the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly then flapped its transparent wings, and a wave of half-transparent pollen formed a beautiful whirlwind that instantly swept across everything within a few hundred yards. Zhao Feng originally just wanted to use the cloud silkworm Saint Silk to attract the enemy's attention. That way, the dream pollen would be useful. After all, everyone knew that Zhao Feng had the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly, and the enemy would definitely be on their guard. Zhao Feng had already messaged the other members of the ninth prince's team before this, and they were able to escape the range of the dream pollen. Not good retreat. It's the dream pollen. The dream pollen could pass through the physical dimension, and was even effective against sacred lords. It was much stronger than the cloud silkworm Saint Silk. Facing the dream pollen, the 30 or so members panicked and could only dodge. Luckily, not many of them had lost the ability to fight because of the dream pollen. Zhao Feng used this chance to circulate the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and merge almost 1,000 thoughts into the group of beasts. Zhao Feng's beast horde instantly started to turn the tide. Under Zhao Feng's precise control, he was able to quickly push back the beasts, and he was even able to split off a portion of them to block the emperors on the city walls. The pressure on the other members of the ninth prince's team decreased. Every time Zhao Feng attacked, he was preparing for the next attack. In just a few breaths, he was able to control the situation and turn the tide. All of you want to come out and cause some damage as well, right? Zhao Feng murmured as he waved his left hand again. Boom, 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 boom. 3 giant golden figures descended on the city walls like metal mountains. The terrifying aura of beasts caused the hearts of some of the members that were slightly closer to shake, and they immediately retreated. Boom. Following this, the golden fur of the 3 sky-shattering golden apes stood on end like steel needles, emitting a brilliant glow. A primordial aura of ancient beasts burst out from their bodies. Some of the nearby emperors were caught off guard, and spat out a mouthful of blood from this terrifying bloodline aura. Some of the emperors further away started to panic, and the bloodlines within their bodies started to tremble uneasily. Beasts from ancient times that have the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races. How is this possible? Zhao Feng strengthened his spiritual pets with such a precious bloodline? The hearts of the emperors and quasi-sacred lords attacking the city shook. One had to know that this place was an ancient dimension, and the beasts here all contained a certain amount of ancient bloodlines. Once they had an ancient bloodline, their power would be close to the original bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng was extremely satisfied as he looked at the 3 sky-shaking golden apes. When Zhao Feng broke through, he told the little thieving cat to take the misty spatial world to the 10,000 blood palace to take back the strengthened sky-shaking golden apes. Time was limited, so only 3 sky-shaking golden apes were strengthened. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.